Mr. President, if you read anything that concerns budgeting in Nigeria, only last year when we were going through our budget, process, unfortunately, last year a bit different from what we are. Yes, the 2019 budget is different from what we are seeing. Thank God that the processes and procedures of our budgeting from Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007, it is there that the MTF and FSP must come before the budget. But you agree with me that last year, budget came before MTF and FSP. So we thank Mr. President for reversing it that MTF and FSP has come before budget. But Mr. President, my very distinguished colleagues, I believe the issue of budgeting in Nigeria, just like some of us mentioned, has become an annual ritual. The problem that we have been having is that each time we budget in our country, we do not meet with the expectations of our people. Anything I believe that we must do now is to ensure that that aspect of it that negates the objective of meeting with our people, which is issue of having enough money in our consolidated revenue fund to meet with budget financing. Therefore, the area of revenue must really be visited with very serious legislation. Mr. President, only recently when the Chief of Staff wrote to the Chairman of FROS to explain the shortfalls in revenue expectation, you equally recall that the answer they were given were that all the expected revenues that were supposed to come to the coffers of federal government did not come for one reason or the other. You recall too that the ad hoc committee of Senator Solomon Adeola some time ago went into this issue of revenue for revenue-bearing agencies of government. We found out that those that are supposed to bear huge revenues to the coffers of government have all fallen short. What they get as revenue, they spend against the law. So I think we must come up with very serious legislation that will bar revenue agencies from spending this money. The Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007 has not cured this problem at all. Because even as they get the revenue, what they are supposed to pay to federal government, they do not pay, and nothing has happened to them. So this issue of TSA, the Treasury single account, can take care of issue of revenue. I don't think we are meeting up to that. We must come up with very serious legislation so that we will have enough money in the coffers of government to prosecute our budget. That again will affect our budget deficit because we have more money. That in turn will affect our external borrowings. So if we do not pursue the issue of revenue, of course, budget execution in Nigeria will see a mirage, particularly capital expenditure. Mr. President, budget is revenue and expenditure. We have I've just mentioned about revenue. Let us go to the expenditure aspect. Mr. President, the anti-corruption thing that we are talking about in this country, let us be more serious. When we come in here to come and allocate revenue to agencies of government, ministry departments and agencies of government, what we see, even with our standing committees, is just a little tip, it's a percentage. The area that has to do with service-wide vote, I think we need to visit with serious legislation. When agencies come to do budget appraisal or budget performance, what our committees see is issue of expenditure on personnel, on overhead and capital. But what has been appropriated under service-wide vote, which is occluded from the vision of the parliament, we too must go and visit it. Because the public account department, the committee is the one that is privileged to say this. And when we ask these agencies to come and account for this money, oftentimes they don't account for it. So this is not the place we are going to talk about them. So the issue of service-wide vote, Mr. President, let us look at it because it's a hidden area where huge sums of monies are located, and it is for unforeseen circumstances or expenditure, which of course is given by the Ministry of Finance and of course disbursed by the Accountant General of the Federation. So that area is a very huge area of leakage in our expenditure. That again, the legislation that we need. To cure it, we must put it in place. Then, Mr. President, let us come to the issue of external borrowing. The DMO is the one that is charged with responsibility of borrowing money on behalf of federal government and state governments. Every time they come here with different requests, and then of course the Senate has always passed it to local and foreign debt. Mr. President, I want to take us back to the external borrowing that was done in 2013. That external borrowing that was done in 2013 came by way of approval of the National Assembly. And that money that was taken was $1 billion. It was supposed to be used for power reforms in the power sector, particularly gas to power projects. The prospectus so spelled, NNPC was supposed to take a chunk of that money, 100 million, to ensure that gas to power project, was perfected for the benefit of Nigerians. But when that money came, one kobo did not go to NNPC. The money was diverted. So did that prospectus for the borrowing for that Eurobond offer of $1 billion was placed. Today is a debt that is hanging on the necks of generations yet unborn in this country. Where did the money go to? Senator General Melaye came up with a motion, and the resolution of this Senate was that the Public Accounts Committee and Power should go and investigate the matter. $350 million was given, $250 million was sent to MBET. MBET gave that one to NSIA, Sovereign Investment Authority. So the original reason for borrowing that money for gas to power project has been defeated. NSIA is now concerned with the issue of building roads, infrastructure. It's like a bank. So this external borrowing, we must come up with serious legislation. Anyone that must borrow, the conditions that are attached to the objective attached to it, we must see to it that it is fulfilled. Otherwise, a lot of the external borrowings are diverted, and Nigerians don't get the benefit. So I don't believe that the issue of having to use external borrowing to sponsor or to finance our budget is an issue that we have to look into, because it is only increasing our foreign debt portfolio, whereas we do not get commensurate benefit of the money that has been taken to meet with the oriental programs in this country. Then, Mr. President, I want to say that if we are serious about corruption, curing corruption in Nigeria, today, public spending, the only law, apart from the constitution that we have, is the one that has to do with Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007, passed by the National Assembly. If you go and check anybody through that falls short of the law, what it says is that the matter is referred to the office of the Attorney General of the Federation. That is where it ends. That same act provides for the establishment of Fiscal Responsibility Commission. That commission does not exist. Till today, the executive secretary, for the past 3 years, the executive chairman does not exist. He's not in office. So the executive secretary is the one that is in charge. So that commission does not work. But this National Assembly, Mr. President, the 8th National Assembly, will pass the federal audit bill here. That federal audit bill is supposed to cure this issue of agencies not auditing their accounts. All their establishment acts very clear that 6 months into the new financial year, they should audit their account and cooperate to the National Assembly or send to the office of the Attorney General. But the Attorney General's office has no funds to function. So this issue of fighting corruption, that is supposed to be the supreme audit institution in Nigeria. If the budget is coming out, go to the office of the Attorney General of the Federation, there's no money allocated to it. So the office is designed to fail ab initio. So if agencies don't audit their accounts, if you go to other clients, we went to the UK, they cannot understand why an agency of government will get money allocated to it 1 year. You don't account for it, the another one is given to you the following year. It can only happen when there is ineptitude in the management in that agency, or that the agency has become moribund. So, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, if we want to fight it, let Mr. President assent to the federal audit bill so that the office of the Attorney General can be strengthened Today, what we are getting as audited reports of agencies of government, it is short of our expectation, and until we are really serious to do the proper reforms and put proper legislation in place, all that we are fighting will just be a mirage. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Senator Dino Melai.
Mr. President, my very respected colleagues, I salute you in the name of the struggle. Mr. President, my very distinguished colleagues, I appreciate the intellectual mobility of those who crafted and put together this legislative agenda. Having perused this document, I will christen it a working document for this 9th Senate, and my singular prayer is that may the 9th Senate operate with the sincerity of purpose, of heart and commitment, so that Nigerians may become the beneficiary of the final copy of the legislative agenda. Mr. President, my colleagues, when you look at the motto of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the first word you have there is unity. The motto is unity, faith, peace, and progress. We cannot have an agenda, we cannot move as a people except we are united. That's why the Holy Book said, two cannot work together except they agree. Mr. President, this agenda must chorus and chronicle very seriously the issue of the unity of this country. Without unity, it will become very, very impossible for people to sit together and have a progressive discussion. Today, Mr. President, by our practice and conventions, we have been so divided as a people, and we have become too ethnic conscious that our legislative agenda must drive the issue of unity in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mr. President, as students in primary and secondary school, the only social disposition we have in the education sector is in social studies. Our social studies only teaches us about Jaja of Opobo, Awolowo of Western Nigeria, Azikiwe of Eastern Nigeria, and Sadona of Northern Nigeria. Even as a child, you are already indoctrinated and imbibed with ethnic consciousness. There's a need to review our curriculum to carry subjects like civic education, like nationalism, like moral philosophy that will bind us together as a people. Mr. President, when you visit a general hospital in this country, even the hospital card that you are going to fill, there's a column for religion, there's a column for tribe, there's a column for language. What has that got to do with your recovery? We have become too ethnic conscious as a people. So there must be a deliberate plan by the legislative agenda of the 9th Senate to unite us as a people. Mr. President, I saw that there's also a very intelligent work on issue of capacity building. Mr. President, it is not possible for you as President of the Senate or the leadership of the Senate to develop the capacity of every one of us. But you must identify those who have capacity to undergo capacity development. They should be capacitated. We must, as a Senate, develop ourselves, not minding the hues and cries out there. Because, Mr. President, without capacity and capability, we may not be able to do a lot of things. Mr. President, our committees must more than ever before become committees that are out for proper oversight functions and responsibilities. Some critical committees have the capacity to rescue this country, to ameliorate and palliate our problems as a nation. In the education sector, Mr. President, we have become so decayed that when I was a student in my biology practical writing WAEC, I bring a live frog to the laboratory, I dissect and label. Today, what you have is called alternative to practical. You only imagine a frog and draw it and label. When I was an undergraduate, Mr. President, in the greatest university south of the Sahara, north of the Limpopo, Ahmadu Bello University area, a medical student is entitled to one cadaver. Cadaver is a dead body. To dissect, to mutilate. But today you bring together 100 medical students and give them one cadaver. And you begin to tell them, when you open this place, this is what you are going to see. That is what education has become in this country. Our science laboratories in secondary schools, you don't even have a litmus paper. Mr. President, our committees must, through oversight function, expose the inadequacies in the education sector and correct the anomalies. The percentage of pass in maths, physics, and English continue to deteriorate year after year. And as a nation, we are not perturbed. As a nation, we are not concerned. It is a dangerous trend that must be checked and must be ameliorated. The health sector, the committee must also carry out a clinical revolution in terms of oversight function. Mr. President, today, Ghana just built their second National Cardiothoracic Center, a country with a population of less than 25 million people. Today in Nigeria, anybody with a cardiac problem, its survival ratio is 0. We do not have one National Cardiothoracic Center in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Our health sector, our hospitals are just mere consulting clinics. Year in, year out, our medical doctors are leaving this country for greener pastures. And as a Senate, we must, through the instrumentality of our committees, check this. And this is same for every other critical committee that have a direct concomitant effect on the lives of Nigerians. Mr. President, we must also digitalize this chamber. We must introduce ICT to all our operations in the National Assembly, particularly in the Senate. And I will humorously say, Mr. President, for our analog elders who need to update their ICT knowledge, we can take them to MTI or these computer schools so that they can catch up with the scientific and technological demands of recent times. It is enough every day, if you know the volume of paper that is being wasted in this chamber. Whenever we are having any plenary, you go home with a bunch of papers every day. Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. The world has moved away from such practice. There is no reason why we should not have a customized tablet. A tablet that is not more than this paper, where the order, our normal order, is there every day. All the debates are there, our vote and proceedings there. So we don't need to be printing these documents, and it is cheaper because the tablet is a one-off. But every day we spend money on printing, on paper, and the bureaucracy itself is a problem. We must, and it is not even environmentally friendly. So I want to advise, Mr. President, that we move from this analog approach to digital approach, where each senator, including Senator Bukatwa, can carry his tablet, and then begin to manipulate the you should look what the
Senator Dino, wind up, please.
Mr. President, sir, I'm also very concerned that when I was a member of the House of Reps Assembly, we had the NABRO office established. That is the National Assembly Budget Research Office. And I want to say that over R1 billion that year was budgeted for the National Assembly Budget Research Office. The House of Representatives at that time even had a standing committee on NABRO. And I think that committee is still existing in the House of Representatives. As I speak, over R5 billion have been spent in training, retraining by the bureaucracy of the National Assembly for the establishment of the NABRO office. There's a functional NABRO office. But the bill was passed, and as I speak, it has not been assented to. And from my research, Mr. President, and my respected colleagues, the Federal Republic of Nigeria is the only country in ECOWAS, in AU, in the Commonwealth that does not have a NABRO office. And that is why our budget is in an epileptic state. That is why the review of budget by the National Assembly can never be perfect. That is why there is no relationship in budget implementation and expenditure between the executive and the legislature. So there is a need, Mr. President, that the 9th Senate take it as a matter of utmost necessity that NABRO bill be signed by the executive. It will help to create transparency in budget expenditure. It will help to create transparency even in budget defense, because most of us here do not have the intellectual capacity and mobility to dissect this budget without the assistance of a budget office resident in the National Assembly. That is very, very important. Our oversight functions over expenditure cannot be complete without a NABRO office, as is being practiced in other civilized climes across the globe. Mr. President, the issue also of budget passage is a major problem that we must look at. Over 70% of the bills passed in the 8th Senate were not assented to by Mr. President. This is outrageously calamitous. It calls for instantaneous correction. The process of bill is cumbersome. The amount of money spent, there is no bill that can be passed without a public hearing. And both the executive, the civil society, and other stakeholders are always invited for public hearing before a bill is passed. How can an executive who is part of public hearing, who refuses to raise issues during public hearing, eventually will now raise issues when it is time for passage? I think since there is now a fiduciary relationship between the leadership of the Senate and the national and the executive, we must take advantage of this fiduciary relationship to make sure that our bills are being assented to, because the essence of doing whatever we're doing here is to make laws for the betterment of governance in this country. And if we sit down and pass bills, and 70% of your bills are being rejected, then our performance here would have been a beautiful nonsense. So I want to believe that the leadership of the next Senate will please carry out this correction so that most of our bills will be assented to, and most of these archaic analog law will be corrected.
Round up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I also want to say that finally on the issue of anti-corruption, Mr. President, there are two major instruments of corruption in this country. Corruption in this country, 95% of our corruption in this country is through procurement. And we have a committee, a standing committee on procurement in this National Assembly and specifically in the Senate. We have the Committee on Public Accounts. These committees must be strengthened and must show political will to carry out very strong ameliorative measures in the issue of procurement in this country. When I was in the House of Representatives, you will recall, those of us that some of us are here, the issue of the second runway of Abuja Airport was awarded at 64.5 billion. And I raised a motion because that same contract was awarded a year before for 8 billion. In less than 12 months, it was awarded for 64.5 billion. And when it was investigated, the presidency called me, they reviewed it to 49 point something billion. I came back and still insisted until that contract was cancelled. You can imagine how 8 billion became 64 billion. That is corruption through procurement. And that is what is happening in most of the MDAs. You will see every year all the MDAs are buying generators. Every year, state government are buying generators. Every year, they are spending on diesel. Every year, they are purchasing computers. And you ask, where are these computers? Where are these vehicles? Where are these generators? It is all issue of procurement. So our committee on procurement, sir, will have to be properly briefed. And the committee on public accounts will have to be properly strengthened. If we want to curb corruption in this country, and the corruption in procurement is not being tackled, and the laws, our procurement laws, are not amended to meet the challenges, the scientific challenges of corruption of modern times, then we'll be in trouble. The second, Mr. President, is corruption in the oil sector. As I speak to you, we do not even have the exact quantity of our oil production, so crude oil production per day, because they have refused to adopt apps and technology that will tell you exact production, because once that is done, the corruption in the sector is gone. So these committees that oversight the petroleum sector, downstream, upstream, gas, must do everything possible to make sure that they unbundle the celestial corruption that is going on in the oil sector. Finally, Mr. President, I want to wish you well. I want to encourage you that the next Senate will be successful as much as you, our president, come out with the political will to energize all of us through the committees to perform. Nigeria is our responsibility. Every one of us took the Bible or the Quran and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and swore to uphold them. And on Judgment Day, every one of us will be asked, what do we do with our calling in this chamber? God bless Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Senator Emmanuel Okajef.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okajef. I represent Plenary Northwest, my dear colleagues. Of course, I'm from Benue State. Mr. President, I've gone through this document, and I hardly can find anything to disagree with. It's a thorough job, and I commend those who are behind the production of this beautiful document. Yesterday, I was discussing with somebody, and he asked me, what is the big deal Mr. President, my response was that there is nothing wrong for the Senate or anybody, any organization to have an agenda to operate on. Now, the 8th Assembly, for instance, had a legislative agenda. At the end of it all, whatever one may say about the 8th Assembly, you can't deny the fact that the 8th Assembly, in its core area of operation, which is lawmaking, was unprecedented in its achievement. I presided for 4 years over rules and business in the House of Reps, and I can say that without fear of contradiction. Now, this document, I'm not going to go through each and every item, but let me start by saying that we must first look inward. One of the challenges that I had as presiding over rules and business in the House was the volume of motions coming in, some of which were unnecessary, playing to the gallery, I'm sorry to say, some because it made us feel good to be seen to be represented. Let's not forget that resolutions are mere advisory, but they can be implemented if they touch on core areas of our national life. If we bring a motion or a resolution just because we want to feel good that we are representatives and we are seen to be caring, I assure you that most of it will not be implemented by the executive. And considering that our role here is not to implement what we pass across, it will be dependent on the executive arm of government to implement. And they can only do that if we are also responsible in the way we respond to some of these issues. I'm saying that with a bit of experience that I had when I was presiding over rules and business. Mr. Speaker, one difference.
You are welcome to the Senate, distinguished Okajef.
Mr. President, one area that I saw that is lacking in the previous legislative agenda, both of the Senate and the House of Representatives, is the suggestion in this document that a committee be set up to evaluate and assess the implementation of what we have set for ourselves. Because oftentimes the tendency is to forget after a few days, when we start our work, we forget what we set out to do in the first place. So if we have that committee that will continually be reminding us, assessing and reminding us of what we set out to do, I think that is critically important. Mr. Even though I said I'm not going to touch on every area, let me underscore, Gino has already done that beautifully. The difference between the first assembly, for instance, and this assembly is the fact that we are living in a communication age that is different from what we used to obtain in those days. And the only difference we can show between then and now is to completely adopt the internet communication system, which is one of the items that has been recommended here. It is critically important, otherwise we'll drag ourselves back instead of moving at jet age as other parliaments are doing across the world. So I think that is critically important. I like the area of the media and the media engagement with the civil society. It is very, very important that we do that because of military interventions over the years. Up to now, a lot of Nigerians, including the enlightened ones, are yet to come to terms with the fact that you cannot have a democracy unless you have a parliament in place. Oftentimes, we are misunderstood. Oftentimes, you have, for instance, you have a minister going around with several official cars, but the idea of buying one official car for a senator or a member of the House of Reps draws national headlines as if that is an offense. It's because we have not engaged them properly to understand the workings of Parliament. So I think it's critically important that we not just put this in this document, but we work on it. Having said that, let me say that I agree entirely with the documents, and I once again commend those who have put it together. Thank you.
Senator Kabir Barkia, Engineer Kabir Barkia.
Distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Engineer Kabir Barkia, Katana Central. Mr. President, let me commend the good job of ad hoc committee. And of course, what is in this agenda, legislative agenda, if, for example, we are going to take 50 or 60% of it and make sure that, yes, it works, even if 80%, I'm sure we'll work off one day, and then this country will be a developed country, not developing country. Because if you look at all the items here one by one, and you see it, and then we sit down, this non-Senate, and we see how we could, of course, revive it, I'm sure Mr. President, the Chungu colleague, will be developed country, not developing country. So I want to look at reviving infrastructure, of which, of course, Mr. President, I know the backbone of any development in any country is good infrastructure. When that country has a good infrastructure, to me, I tell it to be a developed country. And once it's bad infrastructure, then it's the reverse. That's why, if we look at our infrastructure, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we see, are we having good infrastructure or bad? Then we judge ourselves. If we look at the reviving infrastructure, we have at least rebuilding public transportation, electricity, fast rail system, federal highways, modern airport, new seaports, housing and general infrastructure. Let me look at just take federal highways, Mr. President. Everybody knows that, yes, 70 or 80% of our transportation in this country is by road. But do we have good roads? I know nobody will say, yes, we have good roads in this country. Then how could we, what are we going to do, Mr. President, to have good roads? Definitely, I know what we have now as a good road is not more than 20 or 30%. Therefore, we have to look at what are the factors that make this our road to be bad. And how could we address these factors so that, yes, Nigeria will come to have a good road? Because what I always say, the beginning of development is to have good roads. Once you don't have good roads, Mr. President, definitely you don't count yourself maybe as even going to be developed. So we have to look at it holistically. If we look at our federal roads now, or generally roads in the country, the next problem we have is funding. So, Mr. President, how could we fund our roads so that, yes, tomorrow we wake up, this our road to be good roads? Since we know that, yes, 70% of our transportation in this country is by road. So there are many ways that we have to look at. So I keep on keep on calling this our Senate, 9:30, to sit down and look at how. I could call one time, there was a motion that concerned, and Mr. President even mentioned it here, that I could still recall expressing my mind that yes, we have problems of funding of our roads in this country. So how could we at least get funded? I heard that there's a bill, maybe at its own second or third reading, in this in the last National Assembly of Federal Road Authority, which of course Federal Federal Road Fund Board. So, Mr. President, if we can look at this one holistically, just remove self-interest and then sit down and say how could we have a board that will have money at any time to repair our roads. I'm sure everything will be done. And there are many ways to generate funds. For example, the tolling. I know all over the world, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, we know that, of course, we travel out a lot. We know that almost all over the world they are practicing this tolling. Then why we, Nigeria, we are saying we abolish tolling? Because this is a way that, yes, we can generate revenue, get funds at least to repair our roads. There are many ways. We have also this transit vehicle charge. Like, for example, now this closure of border. All over, I believe that I know that before that the time a census was taken, all vehicles coming from other countries, Benin Republic, Niger, Mali, to these countries, of course, we don't collect anything. But our vehicles leaving this country to Mali, to Niger, to Benin, they have taxes they collect. These are ways that we can generate revenue, at least to have our good road. So, Mr. President, I am calling on this at least even if we look at this agenda and reviving this infrastructure, go to the power, go to the sports, and then we sit there. I'm sure one day we'll wake up also to be called developed countries, not developing. For how long can we continue to be developing, Mr. President? So I really appreciate this agenda. We have to look at it holistically, sit down and see how we are going to implement it. And then coming to the youth employment, Mr. President, I think there was a time I attended a conference, one of the countries abroad. In fact, that country, they say 70 to 80% of employment is being provided by public sector industries. Do you have the industries, Mr. President, that will provide employment for our youth now in this country? I think the answer is almost no, if not completely. So therefore, we have to also look at this, our industries, like for example, textile industry. I know it's used, of course, to employ many people, many of our youth. Laborers should be there, semi-skilled and skilled labor. So therefore, Mr. President, we have to sit down and also fix our industries. Because I'm sure about time.
Round up.
So, Mr. President, since I think there's not enough time, let me just talk on these two. And of course, these are the ways I suggested that we can move forward. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and distinguished colleagues.
Chief.
Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. I am concerned about this year-in, year-out budget. Maybe we should, this assembly, I want to thank the committee that made the legislative agenda. We should be more concerned about 20 or 30% recurrent and 70% They are doing 30% capex and 30% recurrent. I'm concerned about it. I don't think the legislative agenda of this Senate should focus more on the recurrent and the capital expenditure. We cannot be having 30% recurrent capital expenditure, 30% capital and 70% recurrent. It's not going to work, and that is why nothing is going on. The roads are not going. The security men have no money to buy ammunition and equipment. I'm more concerned that this 9th Senate have to reverse this trend. We cannot continue on having this kind of trade because it's not going to work. I'm also very concerned where you are producing agricultural products, the cash crops, and nobody is paying attention about the primary manufacturing, how we are going to convert these things to finished goods. And we are talking, we want to move forward in the new legislative agenda. I would like my colleagues to look at issues of our industries. The industries are down. The capacity utilization of all industries in all parts of Nigeria are down. People are not even going to farm. Security should be more primary concern on what we do every day, because farmers are no longer going to farm. So how are they going to farm? People are no longer going to where they're supposed to be. People are not even going to work in the hinterlands because of security situation. In many villages, you see people harassing them. There are too much hatred or hate speeches or religious problems and ethnic problems in Nigeria today. This 9th Senate should address these issues. There are many issues where even people cannot obey simple laws, the traffic lights, the court orders, the processes that make democracy. The software of democracy is rule of law. The software of democracy is not the rules. Once we start aligning ourselves to the rule of laws, where both the state government, federal government, agencies of government will respect the orders and the rule of law, then we have started to move forward. This is what the 9th Senate should pay most attention to. Every day, people come here to do budget. Do we fulfill that budget? Do we execute it? The answer is no. The 9th Senate should pay more attention about the people. I have started seeing people every day writing about 2023. What have we done as elected members? Those that elected us are seeing us now, and people are busy talking about 2023, which they may never see or which they may see. I would like the 9th Senate to find and fine-tune a strategy where people of our country will find more unity than disunity. The country is not what we used to know. People used to drive from Atlantic Ocean to Sahara Desert. Nobody is disturbing them. People used to come from Sokoto to Umuahia. Nobody is disturbing them. Today, nobody can go from Sokoto to Umuahia without a lot of fears. The 9th Senate should focus on the main unity, major security outlets of this country, because people are taking everything for granted. I think the 9th Senate should also pay more attention on agriculture, not agriculture for processing, planting the food. In 2005, people went ahead, cultivated cassava, and they couldn't sell those cassavas because there was no market. Finished product. We need to pay attention on small-scale industries that will be able to do our technology. Order, order. Order. So Mr. President, my main point, people have spoken all the things everybody should say. I'm not sure that everybody, how can a country have over 1,000 something parastatals? How are we going to do it? This nice Senate should shut down on those parastatals because there are too many. It's 1,500 and you are complaining you have no money for development. Yes, they should go back to the ministries. They should go back to the ministries because there are over 1,000 something parastatals and we are sitting here creating more. That is not how economy can work. I like to see the nice Senate think about small government and big enterprise so that we can be able to move forward. Otherwise, we'll just be here doing budget every year and nothing is going to happen. We should start everywhere, whether in the Senate or House of Reps. Yes, we must have to have small government and big enterprise. So Nigerian people can enjoy their money. The budget must change. The budget must change. The capital must be 70%, and recurrent should go to 30% if we want our system to really work. Because the system is not working. It's not working. It cannot work with this kind of 9 trillion we are going to do next week, and the recurrent will be 70% or 80%. The people will not get anything. So I want my colleagues to pay attention in this. I don't know how to profane so much talk, but I know what I have in mind that we are going to do that will work. Because it is easier to have a working economy than to have a standing economy. It's easier for people on the streets to feel that they have a strong economy than we sitting down here and keeping quiet. The budget, we must revise, if not this year, next year. The 9th Assembly must think about, I continue shouting on the recurrent and the capital. We must get back capital to be capital. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Anayo Rochas Okorocha Owele.
Mr. President, let me rise to speak for the love of my country, for exalted character and patriotic devotion. And let me remind all of us here seated, again, as legislators, that every nation of mankind is created by God with their material and human resources. Government and governance is only a guide, for no nation can grow beyond or above their human and material resources for those who has a relationship with God. Let me again say, probably this is the beginning of the 9th Senate. And if you recall, Mr. President, at the inception of the 9th Senate, I did mention that a forum like this should exist, where we can expand our vision and let the world know what the 9th Senate has for this nation. When we discuss the issues of security, thank God that Senator Electoral and his team has come up with something thought-provoking topic of the agenda. When we speak of agenda, we are saying to the world, what do we have for the Nigerian nation as a legislature? Where are we going to? What difference can we make? What's the program? A sense of direction. And without a direction, every government, be it legislature, executive, or judiciary, will fail. So today, we are making a serious attempt in giving to our nation a direction by discussing the agenda of the 9th Assembly. Mr. President, my President, I also want to thank you for making our time. I heard you say, even if this is the only thing we discuss for today, it's worth it. Because most of us here may not even understand the agenda while we're here. To some of us who have been elected to remain politically relevant in the system, for some, it is a place to now cool off as politicians. For governors, most likely. And for some others, it is a place to come and discuss what goes through a society. But we have failed to understand that we are not senators of Oboko or Olu or Imo or Anambra or Zamfara. We are senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In my secondary school, and I'm sure you had opportunity of studying that very interesting topic, which I made an A1, political science. And government.
You call it government. If you make it one, it's government.
Now we are one of the simplest questions was to define the three arms of government. They ask us, what is legislature? We say legislators are the lawmakers. Executive execute the laws being made. Judiciary interpret the law. But what we have failed to understand in this country is that we have only one government, which is called the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We do not have legislative government of Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have only one government. And when we talk about principles of separation of power, Mr. President, those separations of power was just to bring about checks and balances, but not cause disunity among the three arms of government. But today it looks like the only way we can pride ourselves as legislators is if we are seeing a confrontation with the executive or the judiciary. This again is what I call an act of Iberiberism. But, Mr. President, now, Mr. President, please, the matter before us is so crucial and very interesting that opportunities must be given those who have ideas to do so. The question we need to ask ourselves in setting the agenda today is, what really is the problem of Nigeria? Why is Nigeria still the way it is? Why are we having an increasing security challenges in a geometrical progression? Why is there hunger in our land? Why is it that nations that we helped in the past, like South Korea and Malaysia, and even Dubai, has overtaken us, and we have become a laughing stock in the face of other nations? These are what will determine the kind of agenda we set for ourselves. But the way it is now, if we can only answer this question, then we might not set a proper agenda. But let me remind us, our number one agenda, Sectoral, our number one agenda with your committee should be the people and nothing but the people. And we have a duty to make an agenda that guarantees happiness to every common man in this country. But because political power is a trust which can only be justified when used for the benefit of the common man. So our agenda must remain the people, and nothing but the people. Now, in setting this agenda, I thought that since we have one government, Federal Republic of Nigeria, there would have been a joint action committee comprising of the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, with you seated as Mr. Senate President, to discuss together before we separate ourselves to find solution. Today, the executive is speaking from different angle, judiciary is from a different angle, legislature is a different angle. But let me remind all of us, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished senators, that where a nation has failed, the legislature is held responsible. Because legislature is the pivot upon which the wheels of every arm of government rotates. We start what the executive does, and we start what the judiciary does. Without legislature, there can be action of executive, and there cannot be an action of legislature. So I suggest that there must be a teamwork first. Even in the making of our budgets, we must understand, for instance, let me give you an example, let me take a practical approach. President Muhammad Buhari, what do you want to do for Nigeria? First question, I want to do A, B, C, D. Okay, let all the laws we make be gathered towards making you achieve this. That makes the matter a simple task, and there will be progress in this land. A nation that is faced with extreme danger like Nigeria today should seek the wisest course of action, not of convention. There's so much of talk shop, like doing shop. And this is why today we're not able to come together with the executive, give them what they want to make sure they give the Nigerians what Nigerians need. So our laws must change. Our style must change. And if we keep doing the same old things, the same old ways, we shall keep getting the same old results. There will be no difference between the 8th Assembly and 9th Assembly if we do not change our style even on the way we conduct the affairs of the Senate. I wish the leader of the Senate will allow me to expand my voice. Now, what exactly I'm saying here, Mr. President, is that we have to, as a nation first, understand the fact that all is not well with this country. And we have to adopt a new method of approach in approaching issues in this country. And by cutting our coat according to the material available, not according to our size. Because what we are doing today, which presidential system of government provides for us, is that we must cut our coat according to our size and not according to material available. What I mean by this is that first and foremost, what will make Nigerians have confidence in this Senate is to introduce the principles of sacrifice. We, the senators, have to dramatize this, even it is for purpose of letting the public and the ordinary people know that this Senate is willing to make a difference. Because if you cannot imbibe in the spirit of sacrifice, you have no business with any leadership. The point I want to make in cutting our coat according to our size, and I give you examples of what is holding this country down. Today we have Federal Ministry of Agriculture. In the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, my question is, why should we have Federal Ministry of Agriculture? You must practice agriculture when you have land. Where does the government have land? Where the agriculture must take place must be at the grassroots, at the local government level, at the state level, and not at the federal level. Federal government ought to just come and have an advisor on agriculture with policies making, but not to have full Ministry of Agriculture. These are things that create so much demand on the system and does not make it grow. So before the contract starts in Abuja, before it gets to Okigwe Junction, he's suffering from stroke. Before he gets to Owerri, he has developed HIV. Before he gets to my village, it's obituary. So there's over-centralization of power in this country. If we must set up an agenda, our agenda must encourage devolution of power at all levels, including that of security, which people call community government.
This will be a roundup.
Of longer hands. Now, Mr. President, so the point I'm making here is, let us change style. And President Ahmed Lawa, you stand in the threshold of history.
Senate President.
The threshold to make name, if you told this line you are towing, I see probably great things to come if you can follow this thing, to change the style from the old equation and change the whole from the narrative of the past and give us a new Senate which this Nigeria needs for its own development. I said to you today, we have Federal Ministry of Works. So we are going to court. Somebody will travel from here to my village, Oboko, to give a word of contract, and we'll pass the bills here. Before the minister takes off from here, directors, they have spent some few millions of naira in extra court. Yet we're talking about a nation that is going through a process of difficulties. We must cut our coat according to our materials, not according to our size. As I round up on your instruction, though I'm not done, I want to announce to you that we must begin to pick talents, even here in the Senate. When God created men, he gave each one a talent. I don't think this Senate is harvesting talents. Even in the distribution of our committees, we have not seen where people have shown expertise to be able to handle those affairs. And when men are not given such opportunity, their output becomes very, very weak. I share something with you today that might amaze you. Today, I pride myself as a former governor, and I'm talking about anti-corruption. Today, I can stand with pride to say that within my 8 years in office, I'll give you an example, that what I did in Imo State and my performance, put together activities of governors in the past of that area cannot match it. And that's my word of honor before this honorable house.
Distinguished Senator, I think restrict yourself to the issue at stake. The former governors, other former governors are not around to dispute or put their records straight as well. So I will advise that you restrict yourself to the point.
I am talking about style. I'm talking about people being allowed to talent and corruption. Now, I say so because today, if you come to Imo State, you could see the project standing. But no one has cared to ask you, what are you able to do to achieve, to make this impossible become possible? And until we begin to harvest talent and see what people have done to succeed, then we cannot make any headway. What then, and my summary, while I sit down because I don't have enough time, is, Mr. President, today, let's have a meeting of executive, judiciary, leaders, and legislature. Sit down, say to ourselves, this is what we want to achieve. We cannot carry all the projects at the same time. We don't have the money to carry it. I'm sure in the Senate now, we want to add more roads, more hospitals. Why the ones of last year have not been completed? I'm sure we're here now introducing more things. When the last one will pass in 8th and 7th Senate, is still suffering from funding. Let us concentrate. In Igbo, we say, if you need interpretation, meet TLG. Oji can explain to you what I mean. But the principle of concentration will create a form out of any business of a man in the course of metabolic reaction. So, Mr. President, I wish this Senate well, and I wish you well. Please change the style and let's move this nation forward. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues, if we accept, we'll limit our self-contribution by each distinguished senator to 3 minutes. And the chief whip will be a timekeeper now, because we have 30 senators on this list. And I want everyone who indicated interest to speak. So we take 3 minutes, and thereafter the next person speaks. So Chief Whip, come back to your seat. And you watch the time. Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Adedayo Adeye.
The President of the Senate and my distinguished colleagues, my name is Adedayo Adeye, representing the good people of Ekiti South of Ekiti State. Mr. President, I want to thank you for allocating so much time for us to make our contributions on this important item. Because after all, we are laying the foundation for the work we are going to do in the next 4 years, by the grace of God. So it is important that any person that wants to make a contribution be allowed to do so. And I want to thank you for giving us that liberty. I will start by commending the committee for coming out with this very important document. I think they have touched virtually all the issues, and I want to commend them for that. They did a very good job, which deserves very great commendation. I have so many issues I wanted to talk about. Some have been addressed by my colleagues. I don't need to repeat, and I will avoid those ones. But some that I think are very, very important. And given the little time allocated, I will just brush through them quickly. Mr. President, I think the main issue confronting Nigeria today is the problem of youth unemployment and poverty alleviation. The poverty in this country is terrible. Poverty is ravaging the land. Unemployment among the youth is rising to about 70 to 80%, and this has led to many antisocial and activities like kidnapping, armed robbery, and the like. Crime is growing. And I believe we need to address this if Nigeria as a nation must be secured and must maintain peace. For me, there are some radical solutions we need to adopt regarding the issue of youth unemployment in this country. And this has to do with fighting our way out of poverty. Nigeria must produce its way out of poverty. And there is no way by which we can do this if we don't have the courage to say that this idea of importation in Nigeria must stop. Nigeria must begin to produce the little things that we consume. We are a consuming nation. We consume too much, yet we don't want to produce. So the federal government must have the courage, and this National Assembly must back it up to say a few items have to be outrightly banned, and they have to be locally produced. Some, we need to increase the tariff to discourage importation, so that we can encourage local production. A lot of the things we import into this country, we were producing in the 70s. When I graduated from University of Ibadan in 1978 and we were looking for jobs in 79, you could see the entire urban ground filled with industries. All those industries have collapsed. We no longer produce tires in this country. We import tires. Why should we import tires? We import batteries. We were producing batteries before. A lot of things we are producing, we are no longer producing them. And so we need to come back to that policy of import substitution by banning all these products and making sure that those who are sending these products to Nigeria come here to establish plants to produce in Nigeria, in order to generate employment for our youth. Mr. President, sir, I would also like to touch on the issue of infrastructural deficit, particularly. My time cannot be up, please. Just two more issues. I will spend one more.
Chief Whip, you will give warning, 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, and then a warning.
The issue of infrastructural deficit. We need to create an infrastructural fund, just like we had in the education sector, TED fund and all those things, which had helped considerably to manage, to reduce the problem of the education sector. We need an infrastructural fund through taxation, whatever, to manage, to solve the problem of infrastructural deficit in this country. If we begin to build roads, build railways, we will generate employment, and that will also reduce unemployment. Finally, sir, I want to touch on the issue of justice being delayed in this country. We have a situation in which litigation will start and will not end in the Supreme Court in 21 years. Recently, or about 2 years ago, a number was deposed in my area who had been on the throne for 21 years. Litigation started and ended up after 21 years. Justice delayed is justice denied. He was not served justice. The people who sued him were not also served justice. And we had the benefit of what Keyamo was, Honorable Minister Festus Keyamo was able to tell us here, that we need maybe to decentralize the Supreme Court, create Supreme Courts in each geopolitical zone, and then we have a central one that can look at constitutional issues, so that any matter arising from...
The song we should round up, please. Senator Mpigi Badinada.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, the area I want to talk about, let me start by saying Mpigi Badinada. I represent the people of Rivers Southeast Senatorial District. Mr. President, the area I want to talk about is the area of oil. Mr. President, the committee, they've done a very good job. And of course, with the good job they've done, we can all applaud to it and tell them a kudos. But there are some untapped areas, especially within the Niger Delta. There are some communities and some production areas that have been abandoned. Let me say, for instance, in Ogoniland, for the past 25 years, Share has left a particular area untapped. And we are talking about oil production and we are talking about revenue. areas of such should be mentioned. Let me be very specific. OMA 11, which covers the Bomo oil field, OMA 11 that also covers the Korokoro oil field, all within the Ogoni areas. Mr. President, I want this Senate, the 9th Senate that you are representing and sitting down presiding over, to kindly, if we must talk about revenue to increase, Mr. President, this is a time because I can see that the people are prepared for negotiation. I can see that the people are ready for resumption of oil operation within the area. Mr. President, I want you to lead this Senate to see how we can talk with the host communities so that we can put more revenue to the federal government. Mr. President, let me also talk about that area of unemployment of this country, especially that as they affect the youth of this country. Agriculture, Mr. President, is one of such areas. Agriculture is one of such areas. Mr. President, if we deliberately take on agriculture, especially as it concerns the youth in employment, we know that it can definitely help in most areas. Take, for instance, in palm oil production that within the Niger Delta and most part of the Southwest, in Southwest and most part of the Niger Delta, the youth can be gainfully employed. Mr. President, before I round up, let me look at the issue of infrastructural development. Just like others have said, we cannot take all the projects at the same time. Almost all our federal highways are bad. Let's concentrate in some of the areas on some of the highways so that at least we can mention one of the roads in Nigeria that it is possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Distinguished. Distinguished Senator Ezenwa Anyewuchi.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Ezenwa Francis Anyewuchi. I represent Imo East Senatorial District. Mr. President, it is only appropriate I join my colleagues in commending the committee for a job well done. And I also want to thank you, Mr. President, for making this a priority for the Senate, because what you are doing is to get us focused for what Nigerians want. Mr. President, we are going to ask the question, what do Nigerians want? I have seen most of the issues, but I'm persuaded by the issue of the constitutional amendment. Because I believe, Mr. President, that this is an issue we can use in addressing so many issues, myriad of problems affecting Nigerians. Mr. President, on the issue of constitutional amendment, I want us to take a look at the issue of security. Because each day we talk about insecurity in Nigeria, we talk about militancy, we talk about attacks here and there. I believe that the instrument that we have as parliament is the instrument of lawmaking. I also believe that we are here majorly and principally to make laws for the good governance of Nigeria. So using that instrumentality, Mr. President, I think that the issue of security is one we can deal with using the constitutional amendment. The question is, the way our security system is structured, can we achieve what we want? Can we control the states using the headquarters, police headquarters, domiciled here in Abuja? That leads us to granting a bit of independence, if you like. You call it the state police. We will give the states level of independence so that they can achieve, because in other countries we're talking about community policing. So why do we now need to use the headquarters in Abuja to control the whole of the 36 states and Abuja itself? That is one issue we are going to look at. Then we are also going to use the constitutional amendment, because we are looking at pleasing Nigerians. We are looking at what Nigerians want. We are looking at addressing the needs of Nigerians. Mr. President, At independence in 1960, our forebearers opted for a federal system of government. And they did that in all sincerity. That happened until in 1966, when we had the first military intervention. After the military intervention, the military took us from the federal system of government we were running to a unitary system of government. And when the deputy minority leader spoke, he said, we need to find out how we got to where we are today. And by the time we moved from the federal system to the unitary system, the whole problem started. Issues started coming up. We started facing the issues of insecurity. Because at that time, the states or the federating units were allowed to develop at their own pace. So why have we moved from that? Today we are going to ask ourselves, why do we have
So we should round up.
At the center when every road in Nigeria is in a state or local government? So we're looking at a situation where we are going to address the revenue formula. Those are the issues we are going to courage. Nigerians are tackling some of the sensitive issues. Show courage in tackling some of the sensitive issues. So as Ninth Senate, under your leadership, Ninth Senate, I am hoping under your leadership that these issues, including the autonomy of the local, look at this government, including the autonomy of the local third tier of government. The local government is supposed to be the third tier of government. If indeed, why do we still have joint account third tier of government? Why do we still have joint account independent with the state? And those are the issues Nigerians expect us to tackle. And those are the issues Nigerians of lawmaking. Mr. President, I think with some of these issues, we are expected to come up with a completely new paradigm. And if we are able to give that to Nigerians, Nigerians will be happy with the Ninth Senate. It will be a complete deviation from the past, where for Nigerians they will be. If you don't want it to be business as usual, we are going to look at the critical areas. We are going to look at the areas.
Distinguished, we have other senators to do this, so please, we have 30 seconds to round up.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, if we're able to look at these issues, like I said, I think Nigerians will applaud the Ninth Senate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very much. Senator Ama Michael Nachi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished colleagues. I am so much in support of the document I'm holding here because it's very encompassing, and I thank the committee for doing a good job. My stake I'll just put here is, many have spoken and we are almost at the same place. If I were to put, I would have asked the President of the Senate to just ask us to put up this thing and we go for the actions of it. But no matter how it is, we have to put our voice. I will put my voice in the area of public procurement. The public procurement we are using today is a commerce affair. We need to amend it. We need to amend it because if we continue with it, the foreign companies we are patronizing will keep taking our money away. We don't have local content aspect of that Public Procurement Act. So it is shallow. And I wish the committee involved to come up with a bill so that we iron it out and strengthen that area. The second area is that everywhere in the world, we've shifted from government providing everything all the time to partnership, public-private partnership. We need to make law into that area so that the little money we have, government can employ into other areas. In the partnership agreements, the investors can come in, recoup their money from what they have invested, not to recoup it from profit in other places. Take, for instance, the Lekki toll gate. It has paid off. through public partnership. The committee in this area should make meaning of this very area. We are here for the people, and we need to make law that the people will benefit. We need to examine ourselves why we are here. Of course, we are in a situation that returning is as tedious as going over. But as the Vice Senate, we can go over to the right direction. And with the leadership we have, I trust he will lead us to the right direction. These two areas can strengthen our economy without going outside to borrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Enachi. Distinguished Senator Ayo Akinye-Lure, all over one.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I remain Ayo Akinye-Lure, representing Ondo Central. I join my other colleagues to commend the ad hoc committee for a job well done. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the ninth agenda of this Senate, in the ninth Senate agenda, it is important for us to look forward to ensure that revenue from non-oil sources should be entrenched and ensure that we generate enough revenue for the federal government to be able to fund our annual budget deficit on a consistent basis. Taxes and levies collected by all levels of government should also be enhanced by next Senate. Mr. President, the relevant committee on education should also come with legislation that will enable all the tertiary institutions in Nigeria, make it compulsory. A program like the entrepreneurship program that will enable every graduate of this country to learn one trade or the other before completing of their programs in the university. Like you possess one particular skill as an individual. This will be a source of actually, providing job opportunities for graduates without actually looking at everybody that comes out from university every year wants to get a job in the federal service. But when you are a separate man, by the skill you acquire in the university, if you get out of the university after your NYSC, if you cannot have a gainful employment in any federal government agencies or state government agencies, you can create a job for yourself. If you learn to be a fashion designer before leaving school, you can feed. These are areas I believe the 9th Senate should concentrate to ensure that all these issues are resolved. Mr. President, there are executive orders that is beneficial to all sectors of this economy, and when these executive orders are put in place, it is necessary for the executive, the legislative arm of government to back it with law. Example is that of a BSc HLD dichotomy bill that passed through the second reading in the seventh assembly. The executive order has put in place now. Many university graduates and many of our school leavers, they now approach university and then polytechnic education. I think it's important for this Senate to ensure that that particular HNBSC dichotomy is passed into law. Again, Mr. President, this agenda of the current Senate should be that of we should be able to ensure that most of the bills passed by a particular session of a Senate or National Assembly, when it is not signed by Mr. President, this particular assembly or this next assembly should make it a duty that assembly should be a continuum. That is, any bill not passed in the 8th Senate now, the normal rule is for each one to start it all over again. Mr. President, under your leadership, we want an improvement because it is the effort of senators or House of Rep members to bill
in a particular assembly, when the president failed to, assent to it, we should not go back to square one. There should be maybe for us to amend our rule in that respect, so that at least it will facilitate areas where amendment need to be made, so that it can be passed to be for Mr. President to assent to it.
You can start rounding up, please.
National Assembly. We have some institutions under the National Assembly. They also need to be enhanced in terms of capacity building. The National Assembly we have today, we have Nigerian Institute of Legislative Studies, we have the National Assembly Service Commission, we have the NABU, we have the Public Complaint Commission. For instance, Public Complaint Commission has an office in all the 36 states of the federal with a federal capital territory. But, Mr. President, there is nothing there. So this assembly needs to enhance the agencies under the National Assembly for it to be able to complement the effort of the National Assembly to actually achieve the purpose for which we are elected here. Mr. President, I also submit and I support the agenda presented by the ad hoc committee of the National Assembly Senate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The single Senator Samuel Ewu.
Thank you, Mr. President. Samuel Ewu, representing Ebonyi North. Excellency, Mr. President, and my dear colleagues, I wish to join my colleagues in appreciating the committee that did this work on the 9th Senate legislative agenda. And I know that the purpose is to see how we can, through legislation, appropriation, and oversight, assist the executive in pushing this country forward. And to that end, I wish to just comment on one sector, the education sector. We have all talked about the decay in that sector. We have also talked about the level of crime, the insecurity issues caused by unemployment. And my take on it is that if we strengthen the education sector as enunciated through this 9th legislative agenda, we shall be able to come out of that difficulty. I believe that in such that sector we must emphasize technical education all over the world to make progress in the general economy of any country. Technical education is the way to go. I was the Minister of Education in this country, and I drew up a roadmap where I emphasize technical education as the only way to go. Mr. President, I believe that if this 9th Assembly will work with the executive to strengthen that sector, we will go a long way in solving the issue of unemployment, the issue of crime and security. Because the moment we have skilled youths, it's not about getting a degree in the universities, but training people who have skills, who at graduation from their various institutions will now be employers of labor themselves, stand on their own without looking for a white-collar job. When that is done, I believe we must have gone a long way in helping the government. And lastly, the housing sector is in total collapse in this country. We have National Housing Authority, we have Ministry of Works and Housing, but the housing sector is having a lot of problems because funds meant to be given to the housing authority is now being used for other companies, let me say that way, companies that are formed and given money, and money that is not made known to the National Assembly, that is put under the service-wide vote, so that there is nowhere that the appropriate authority is oversighting that. And they are doing that, leaving the housing authorities that should be able to have the fund to do their job. I believe that this National Assembly, this National Assembly, will do a very good job on that in trying to make sure that the lapses in the sector is harmonized for the improvement of the Nigerian public. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Senator Mohammed Sanusa.
Thank you. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I've gone through these documents, and there's nothing I can say than to commend the authors of this very important document, because what they have did, they took almost everything Nigerian projects, because with these documents, as a legislative body, if we can adhere to it, we'll be able to achieve almost all that we require to make our country great. As such, I think they deserve commendation. Mr. President, everyone have stood up here and said so much about the deficiencies we have in the operation of this country. Yet, it is the same we here that are supposed to passion the path that will bring us out of where we are today. And how do we do that? This adult committee has given us a leeway that we can pick to start something different for this country. We have had leadership in this country that are so committed and patriotic, but the know-how might not be there for them. But we thank God that we have started it this way by designing a plan that will bring us to the anyway, I won't say to the destined land, but to where we want to be. I have gone through this, especially in the lawmaking, which we as senators, we are designed to do. The electoral process in this country needs serious reform, very serious reform. From the way we conduct elections, from the way we recognize who should be elected, litigations after elections, all these things need to be checked. If you look at all the Francophone countries in West Africa or in the West African region, you will never find them having issues of litigation after election. Why is it like that? It's because they have a process that they looked at holistically to see how it will go with their own domestic ways and processes of electing their true representatives. And that is what we need to do in this country as well. The Justice Ways Committee on Electoral Reform, they made a very serious work. They gave Nigeria a pathway of how we can conduct our elections, if not perfectly, but at least close to perfection. But we have refused to go that path. This is the right time now for the 9th Senate to look at the electoral process of Nigeria and adopt. Political parties have no business being in INEC. INEC have no business registering political parties. Something has to be done about that. In Senegal today, if there is an election, it's not even the electoral body that announces who wins the election. It is taken to their constitutional court for the pronouncement. And before the constitutional court will make a pronouncement, they will make sure that all procedures, all the acts setting out on how to conduct those elections are followed to the end. We are talking of poverty alleviation. We have set a target, Mr. President has set a target of 100 million out of poverty in the next 10 years. How do we achieve that? How can we achieve that with the kind of education setup we have in this country today, where you can find a lot of graduates that cannot make a sentence, that cannot even draft an application letter for employment? How do you do that? Today, the whole world is going technological. Is that the case with our country? Why do we go out and enjoy what is there, and we cannot come back here and make our own to be even better so that we can enjoy it? We must do some legislations here. We must put legislations here that will enforce technology in the operations of our country, either in the education.
Distinguished, you can round up now.
Getting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. It is here that we're supposed to set up that strategy of getting those 100 million Nigerians out. How do we do it? Why don't we copy the way China did? They set up a strategy. After setting up that strategy, they set up an implementation committee that followed all the processes of getting every youth in that country productive. Between the age of 18 and 25, today we have more than 75 million Nigerians. And they are very unproductive today. How do you tackle that without putting the right framework in human capital development? What have we done about that? Today you have even the civil servants, the bureaucrats that have been very, very dormant because they have remained where they are, and no training, nothing. How do you expect them to go with the face of what today's world is like? So all these things, we need to seriously work on them here, and also try to see how we can liaise with the other organs of government in making whatever legislation that we're going to make here become a reality. There are too many laws in Nigeria. There are too many acts in Nigeria. Virtually everything you touch in Nigeria, there is an act, there is the law. But has it been effectively been used to achieve what it was set for? Never. So I think this is the right time that the 9th Senate will set a new phase for the Nigerian project to be able to be achieved. Initially we said 2020. I doubt if 2020 can be realistic to achieve that project, but we can set that target of saying 100 million Nigerians are out of poverty by the...
Distinguished, you should round up, please.
Mr. President, this is a very important topic. And
Our colleagues are also waiting to speak on this important topic.
thank you, Mr. President. I have heard my president.
No, you had 30 seconds to round up.
Okay, I rounded up, Mr. President.
I hope you have not been harassed. The single Senator Ibrahim Hassan Hadeja.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senate President. Ibrahim Hassan Hadeja, representing Jigawa Northeast. Mr. Senate President, virtually all the 5 issues I've listed out to speak on have been thoroughly discussed by earlier speakers. The only thing I will add, which is on the issue of the e-Parliament initiative, is to say that, again, like Senator Dino Melai mentioned, virtually everything listed in the committee report as a desirable is already in existence. Our motions, our order papers, they are all online. What is left now is also to migrate committee activities on that platform. And I think that will serve 2 purposes. One, it will help keep committees on their toes. If they have key performance indicators and it's in the public realm, then they also know that whatever they are doing is under scrutiny by the general public. And secondly, I think it will also help in terms of the perception, media perception out there. If we migrate what committees are doing, people are aware that the Senate doesn't begin and end with what happens in these chambers and what they see on TV. Maybe the pressure or the bad press that is, has pervaded the activities of the National Assembly would be reduced. And this is where our committees on publicity need to also come in. I think it's very important for them to use that platform and try to dissipate what happens on the electronic media. A lot of the bad press starts from electronic media, social media, and then migrates to regular press. If people are aware of what the Senate is doing outside parliamentary sittings, I think it will do a lot to change the perception. Some of us who are in the Senate for the first time actually also had that impression before. Why does the Senate only sit for 3 days? Yesterday, I had a discussion with one of the chairman of my committees, and I realized that if we were to handle even half of the work that was before us, we probably even wouldn't have time to come and be present in plenary. So I think it's very, very important for committee work to be more visible. And I think if we migrate it to the existing platforms that are already there, then it's left for us to interface with most of these social media platforms. People are aware that the work of the Senate doesn't begin and end in the Red Chamber. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, distinguished Senator Ibrahim Gobir.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. My name is Ibrahim Gobir from Sokoto East. So much has been said, Your Excellency, about this very important agenda. But I'm going to confine myself to very few, particularly education and employment, because this will have to be tied together. In this case, again, we would have to look at the issue of functional education. So the Education Committee should look at functional education, because by the time the graduates come out, already 50% will be employed, and they should be able also to employ others. Then the other item is that of ICT and able Senate. Already, Your Excellency, we have tablets that are customized for all the senators, and I'm sure with that you can get all your information, and even if you are outside the country, you should be able to go through that one and use the tablet and know what is happening within the Senate. So the chairman of services should contact the Senate clerk. I believe that will be available, Your Excellency. Then the other issue of economic growth, there is no way we can do that without diversification in agriculture, because agriculture is the mainstay of this country, and therefore we have to do much about it. Budget. The crux of the matter here is not the budget itself, but the implementation of that budget. A situation whereby you budget about 9 trillion and only 5 to 10% of that implemented, I think that goes to say quite a lot in the implementation of the budget. I think this has to be done. So we have to look at it.
Then the issue of oversight is very important. And therefore, we have to be very, very transparent in that. Transparency, transparency, and transparency. Without transparency, there is nothing can be done. Even in governance, right from the local government, to the federal. If there is no transparency, certainly nothing is going to be done. Then the other one is the security situation of this country. Security says quite a lot. Without security, when you are talking of lack of welfare, you are also talking of banditry, you are also talking of armament. So I think the most important thing is to secure the nation, because that is the fundamental objective in our own constitution for any government, to secure property and lives of people in this country. So I think that is need to look at. Then the issue of funding of committees. Your Excellency, whatever we do, if the committees are not well funded, honestly they will be grounded. So there is need to look at that issue and then try to fund it. Then another is ad hoc standing committees. It is important to classify this one so that whenever we can use standing committee, it is more important to save money than to use ad hoc, because ad hoc also takes quite a lot of money. But standing committee will have to continue with what they're doing. Then we also look at the issue of tracking of bills. If the bill is well tracked, then it means there is no way a bill can spend about a year or two without finishing it. So I think it's important to continue to track it, to make sure that by the time this is tracked or monitored, you can be able to do it on first come, first served basis. Not just to get a bill now and then say tomorrow it's out. But of course, if it is based on the executive and then you feel that it's necessary, it's very important, it has to be done, of course it can be done. But it's better to look at first come, first out. So I think generally, Your Excellency, that's the only thing I can say. I have finished. Thank you very much. Yeah?
Well, distinguished Senator Patrick Abomoro.
Comrade Senator Abba Patrick Moro, representing the very good people of Benue South.
This time we are lucky we have only one comrade.
Distinguished colleagues, as an avid follower of the evolution of the Ninth Senate, I want to commend this committee for bringing out this very comprehensive compendium of what is expected of us to do better the lots of Nigerians. And Mr. President, without any fear of contradiction, I want to think also that this is a reflection of your vision for the Ninth Senate. Consequently, therefore, ranging from all matters that concern average Nigerian, the electoral reforms, the reforms of the public procurement process, the consideration or reconsideration of the 35% affirmative policy or action for women. Mr. President, it contains virtually everything that we require to do in the Ninth Senate to make a difference, which I know is a promise that you made and all of us here have made. Therefore, Mr. President, without much ado, I want to think that what we require to do now is to develop the political will to do what is necessary to ensure that we touch on every aspect that we have set for ourselves here. Mr. President, this document is a benchmark for us in the Ninth Senate. It is the basis of which Nigerians tomorrow will hold us to account. Therefore, Mr. President, I urge that this Senate approves this agenda that has been put very comprehensively by this committee as a guide for our subsequent actions to make a difference for Nigerians to see. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Clifford Odia.
Mr. President, I want to thank you very much for this singular opportunity. My distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Clifford Odia, representing Edo Central Senatorial District. Let me begin by thanking the chairman and members of this ad hoc committee for dealing decisively on the issues confronting us in this country. But let me say, Mr. President, that I found in this report that one of the major problems confronting us in this country is completely absent, and that has to do with the payment of local debts in this country. You will agree with me, Mr. President, my very dear colleagues, that those that are being owed in this country are our brothers and sisters. And as I speak with you right now, they are suffering in silence. I think it is important that we intervene in this direction. The local debt, as I speak right now, Mr. President, is in excess of 2.5 trillion naira. And this is very alarming. And we're talking about new budgets that will involve, spending on capital projects. This is not good enough. I want to say, Mr. President, that we must, as a matter of urgency, add this as part of our legislative intervention in the ninth Senate. I agree with the committee report on infrastructural development in this country, those that have to do with our highways, our educational sector, the housing sector, and in fact the creation of jobs for our youth. This is very apt at this point in time. And I think I want to thank you, Mr. President, for setting this agenda. Posterity will prove you right, that this is the best thing to do at this point in time in the development of our great nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Distinguished Senator Kola Balogo.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. I like to join my colleagues who have commended the efforts of the ad hoc committee. This document is an erudite document. Look at page 23 of this document. They have suggested what we need to do to improve on our economy. They have dealt extensively on the need for us to work to diversify our economy. Yes, I agree with them. Agriculture is a mainstay of our economy. Gone were the days in this country when the tallest building in sub-Saharan Africa, which we call Cocoa House in Ibadan, 25-story building, was built with revenue accruable to the government of Western region with cocoa production. I recall that in the north, we had what they call granite pyramid. Revenues accruable from such efforts were used to develop the north. And so we had palm oil in the east. So where have we gone wrong? Now we had oil boom, crude oil. Then we became a monolithic economy. No nation can survive and succeed and prosper being a monolithic economy as we have. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, we need to invest on our power infrastructure. We need to invest on our road infrastructure. We need to invest on our rail infrastructure. When we do that, we know that profit-making and profiteering drives capitalist economy all over the world. International investors will come the moment we make our environment enabling for them to make money in our country. We are a resourceful nation. We have the markets, but we need to close these infrastructural gaps to attract investors to come to our country. But of course, we talk about youth unemployment. The other day I had a discussion with...
Point of order, leader.
Due to the remaining number of our colleagues who have indicated interest in contributing to this debate, and pursuant to our Order 13, I would like to move that the Senate do sit beyond the time appointed so that we can be able to give a chance to our remaining colleagues to make their own contributions. I so move, Mr. President.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Distinguished senators, before I put the question, we have 10 more people to go, and 15 minutes will not be enough for our colleagues, the 10, to contribute. And this will be the essence of extending the time beyond 2. So those in favor of the motion to extend time beyond 2 o'clock, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Kola Bologum, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I was saying, I said there is a need for us to work to invest in our power infrastructure, rail infrastructure, and road infrastructure to attract investment to this country. But when we talk about youth unemployment, the reason we are having youth unemployment is because the economy is not expanded enough to create jobs for our youth. Finally, Mr. President, even after we have succeeded in doing all this, we still need to do something about the security in this country. Almost every day when you pick up the newspapers, this morning, I was reading in the paper that about 8 people got killed in Kogi State by kidnappers. They have even carried the battle to Abuja. About 3 weeks ago, I think about 5 people got kidnapped in Abuja. This is unacceptable. Gradually, we are sliding into an obedient state of nature where life is short, brutish, and nasty. This must not be allowed to continue. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let us send strong signals to those criminals by way of legislative intervention. I don't see anything wrong if kidnapping is made a capital offense which attracts capital punishment. As once we do that, I'm sure Nigerians will applaud our efforts and the entire country will be better for it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Senator Obiano Ogba. Distinguished Senator I.D. Gyang.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name remains I.D. Gyang, representing the very good people of Plateau North. Mr. President, as a member of the ad hoc committee that crafted this agenda that is being debated, I am not rising to object to any of the issues. Rather, I am highly elated by gallantry and eloquence of the very constructive contributions of distinguished senators. However, I just want to re-emphasize on paragraph 361, which has addressed the specific regional development challenges of all the regions of this country, and to particularly say that in this agenda, they need to create a legislative platform that will enable government to directly intervene and facilitate the return and reconstruction of displaced communities following the insecurity that has been characterized by violence and banditry. We gladly note the intervention that is leading to reconstruction in the Northeast. And if we can replicate that in the North Central and in the Northwest that are currently challenged by displacement, that will bring succor to communities and internally displaced persons. That will be the emphasis that I'll be adding for us to emplace in this agenda that is very, very well articulated. Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues.
Thank you very much. Senator Tolu Odebi.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I remain Tolu Odebi from Ogun West. Mr. President, I've had the opportunity to listen to my colleagues over the last few minutes. A lot of them have given a lot of eloquent speeches and thoughts as to the issues affecting us. Let me also commend the committee that came up with this document. I took time to look through it, especially to ensure that it was in line with the economic growth and reduction plan of the federal government. And I saw that a lot of issues that were raised by the federal government in terms of their policies were captured in this plan. However, having said that, I want to ask us as a legislative body that there's need for us to be bold, to be a bit more bullish. All the economic indices, if you look at it, is not in our favor. Poverty is on the rise, human mortality is down, just name it. All the population is on the rise. We are going about 3.2% annually. I did a calculation, that's almost 5 million. I'm sure by the time we finish our 4-year term here, you can imagine how many more growths we have in this country. And with the kind of initiatives that we have, I don't think it addressed the critical issues that we are going through in this country. A lot of them are palliatives. A lot of them are addressing issues. As a body, as a legislative body, we must be aspirational and we must be futuristic. That is what our laws should be thinking about. What do we see? What do we anticipate? And what are we making laws for to guide against it? If we have a population growth that we are looking at in a few years' time that is going to be huge, then we have to make sure that the laws and everything we are doing will guide against economic calamity. Mr. President, I also want to commend my colleagues that talked about diversification. I believe, and also one of my colleagues here, I believe that everything we are talking about here hinges on one fundamental and critical issue. That's the issue of constitutional amendment. We have a constitution that is not in line and in tandem with the realities of today. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have an issue where if you look at the concurrent list, the exclusive list, states can still not undertake certain things. You have issues. Somebody talked about the issue of state police. Somebody talks about the issue of federal roads. So we have to take a look at all these critical things that are hinging and holding us down economically to be able to address some of the challenges that we have, the growth population, all these issues that is going to affect us economically. Mr. President, and I also will want us to also be, come up with different ideas. I sat down, I was looking at, okay, how else can we develop in this country? Yes, every region has its own capacity. Every region has its own strength. Can we start looking at issues of maybe regional budgets? Apart from their state budget, they now have regional budgets, and those are the budgets they come and discuss in the center. And they collectively can develop their region based on their regional budgets. We have to start thinking critically in order to address some of the issues that we have in this. Everything we've spoken about today, they are operative in nature, they are symptoms that we are going through, but they don't address issues that we are going to be confronting in the future. So these are some of the issues that I see in what we're going through. Also, I think there's a need for us to also streamline, to look at some of these issues that we've raised. But overall, I just want to say once again, I think there's need for us to be bold, to be bullish, to understand that all that we've spoken about hinges on one fundamental issue, that's the constitutional amendment, which hinges on a lot of things. We have exclusive ways, we have issues of the center holding up a lot of power that hinders a lot of states to develop. Some of these states, we're going to be confronting some economic challenges in the future, even globally. And we have to look at how do we look at some of these amendments to enable some of these states to be able to take a look at their resources and tap into them and grow. So those are some of the issues I have to raise. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Bima Mohamed Enagi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, my colleagues. My name is Bima Mohamed Enagi. I represent the good people of Niger State. First of all, I would like to congratulate the committee for the wonderful work that they have done to have come out with the legislative agenda, which so many speakers have spoken about. I believe they have done a very good job, and I trust that if, Mr. President, we are able to follow through the recommendations contained in this legislative agenda, your vision of the Senate that works for Nigerians will be realized. And I want to appeal to you and to all other colleagues that are present here that we should support the agenda as presented by this committee. Most of the things that I'd like to address have been actually spoken upon by my colleagues, like agriculture, the issue of security, the issue of education, and so many other issues. I think they have been discussed. But my area of concentration, which I would like to draw the attention of my colleagues, are one, foreign affairs. I won't believe that the committee had not addressed the issue of foreign affairs properly in this document. I think it needs to be addressed, especially taking into consideration what had happened in the recent month, between South Africa, Ghana, and so many other countries. So I want to believe that it should be addressed. It should be addressed properly. Secondly, is the issue of procurement, which many people have spoken about. I believe very strongly that most of the corruption cases that we have in Nigeria all emanate from procurement, whether it's in the oil industry, in the construction industry, wherever, it's all procurement. And this is why procurement is very essential, that we need to do something about 2007 Act. That Act is completely obsolete, and it has to be addressed properly. Right from the very first section of that Act, that talks about the composition of the council. It's not proper. So many things are wrong with that Act. The issue of the council, the issue of advance payments, as you all know, we have a lot of problems in the infrastructural development in this country. And one of the reasons is because of this procurement. A project that is scheduled to be completed in 2 years takes 10 years, and it's not just because of the funding, because of the corruption that's embedded in the procurement process. And I want to believe that this Ninth Assembly will address that issue properly. The third issue I will also want us to look at, and I think somebody has spoken about it, is the issue of the ease of doing business in Nigeria. It's very important that all the relevant laws that deal with ease of doing business in Nigeria should be addressed. The proper amendment should be made into such laws. Because everywhere in the world, nowadays, development is not government. Development is private. Private investment is very important. And if our infrastructures are not well developed, if the ease of doing business in Nigeria is not proper, people will not come and invest. Even Nigeria will not want to invest in Nigeria. So it's very important that, that all the relevant laws that deal with investment, private investment, should be looked into. The last area I would like the committee to also try to address is the issue of compliance. Compliance to court judgments, and obeying laws. Nigerians don't obey laws. We don't obey laws, and it's very important for democracy to thrive in our country. We must obey the laws. The courts, when they give judgment, governments should ensure the enforcement of such judgments. And I rest my case. I want once again to commend the committee for wonderful work that they have done, and I appeal to my colleagues to support it, and I personally support it, and I wish us well.
Thank you very much, distinguished Senator Ambabakaita.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ahmed Babakaita, representing Katsina North. Let me equally congratulate the committee for a wonderful work under your guidance. But like most of us said, there is nothing that has not been said. Starting from the fundamentals of how to get our economy back, to our unity, there are so many broad aspects that has been discussed here, which are really the main problem that we should be addressing. But, Mr. President, mine is to advise or to encourage you, and this is our newfound relationship, to make sure, because I know your importance to this government and I know your worth, to leverage on that relationship and make sure that this agenda works in tandem with the federal government agenda, so that the two agendas can be one and be made to work immediately and promptly. I say this with all due sense of responsibility because I knew how the 8th Senate unfortunately dragged the whole country down, and most people were talking about it here. Even some were saying that we used to have political motion here, where somebody will just wake up, just because he wants to come here and get a glimpse on the national TV, will come here with motion, knowing fully the issues involved in those motions, because they are beyond one day solution. It has to be a long-term solution. So mine is to make sure that we leverage on the relationship. I'm sure that we have a committee that will implement this agenda with time frames, so that at every point in time we can look back and say, oh, from the time that we started to today, what are the milestones, what have we achieved, or where are you going? If there are problems, we can critically come back and put them on the table, reassess them, and see the way forward. Otherwise, it will just remain an agenda, because I knew we had so many agendas that had not been feasible and realizable. And this is because the implementation aspect is either one-sided or there is no harmony between the two arms of government. But this, I think, is the biggest opportunity that Nigeria will have in the recent time, because we have relationship based on mutual respect, not because somebody is transferring, but because we realize that without one of us, we cannot be able to achieve what we want to achieve or what we set for ourselves to achieve. So mine is just to emphasize on how we should make sure that the agenda goes beyond an agenda. We move to implementation stage. A lot of issues have been, even the Senator lately raised the issue of budget implementation. It all boils down to that harmony. My friend Dino Malai, who has just left, talked about bills that were not assented to. Of course, the president cannot sign every bill. It has, whenever he signs something, make sure that it's very important and it carries weight. So if there are problems with any bill, no matter the rigors or the thoroughness that it has, if there is anything that he feels must be addressed, and he never sent a bill without giving the reason why he did not assent to it, it will be there. Some of them are even legal problems that has to do, all the Senate or the chambers of the National Assembly has not done their work thoroughly. So some of it, we have to, it's even back to us. So we have to make sure that if we want our bills to be assented to, then we have to sit down and do a thorough work for the president. A lot of these things can be done and can be achieved by your singular leadership, that we think this new bound relationship, you will drive it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator Francis Fadahousi.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. I have to commend Senator Adamu's led committee for doing a good and thorough job. The committee has given us a really good roadmap to follow. But with all the comments by all other distinguished, there may be no need for any repetition. But our attention should be focused on few things, few issues that at least we have to do first before all others. Number one, security. Without security, we cannot stay where we are today. Without security, we cannot legislate on anything, and we cannot move. Our emphasis must be on how to secure the society with the collaboration with the executive. We have to do that one on time. Two, our relationship with our own brother on the other side, that's the rep. We have to be on the same page, on the same agenda. I cannot be calling up, talking here, and they are talking B. The executive will not take us serious. We must find a way of cooperate with them and be on the same firm ground and effective ground to push our cases up. Number three, education of the public, the children we are having. If we develop a good educational system, particularly educated society, then we have our wins. Without education, then we are having problems. Let us develop a system where almost all our children will be highly educated, so that at least whatever we do here will be very effective there. Employment is another problem which we have to tackle. Apart from that, the remaining is how to do our own revenue base, how to increase the revenue base from oil. We have to go to serious agri, particularly cash crop, where we can make a difference. For now, what crude oil is given to us is so tiny and it's not going around. By now, we should be achieving something on greater revenue on cocoa, cashew nut, cola nut, and so on, so that we can have a broad-based revenue that will carry all our budgets every year. Then, two, taxation. The already burdened the society having double or triple taxation. We have to review that taxation law that will not allow all our industries to close down, that will allow all other foreigners to come and invest here. The serious taxation system we are having there is discouraging the investors and even individuals. Then health is already almost in comatose. Let us find a way of having a healthy society. Primary health care should be taken into consideration from the primary level. The local government is dead in Nigeria. Let us find a way of removing local government from the clutches of the government, state government, so that local government can function. The problem we are having here is that most of the people, since there is no local government functioning again, you see influx of everybody into cities. And that is why we are having crimes upon crimes. And people must live, and they must live well. With all this, then we go to foreign policy. I'm suggesting again that Nigeria should be the center of our own, pillar of our own foreign policy. I'm not saying Africa is not, but all other countries in Africa, they are making their own country pillar of their own, so that our own country will be number one first, then later Africa. With all this and others, I still commend Senator Adamu led committee for doing a good job, and commend you, Mr. President, for appointing brains and good brains to do this work for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator Gabriel Susan.
Mr. President, my name is Gabriel Suswam, Benue Northeast. Mr. President, the disadvantage of speaking last after very good speakers have spoken is that you'll be repeating what they have said. But having said that, Mr. President, I want to sincerely thank you for having the wisdom of setting up this committee. This committee has brought to fore the reason why we were elected to be here. The agenda before us addresses the concerns of Nigerians. And we as representatives were discussing it because we represent the hopes, fears, and aspirations of Nigerians. And by that, we have the mandate to discuss issues that affect them. Mr. President, the issues that affect Nigerians can be classified simply into 3 or 4. The issue of poverty in this country, which have escalated to unenviable height, issues of infrastructure, and issues of security. And then, of course, you can combine political and economic issues together. Now, Mr. President, poverty in this country, about 72% of Nigerians are living below the poverty line. 72% of Nigerians. That is very alarming, Mr. President. And so what we are here to do is to legislate. That is our primary responsibility. Most of what people have said here are not necessarily the responsibility of the legislature. But like some speakers have said, if we cooperate with the executive, we'll be able to achieve together. Because both the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary are all intended by the Constitution to work towards a common purpose, that is addressing the welfare of Nigerians. And so if we embark on legislations that can reduce the poverty level in this country, and there are different ways that we can do it, we will help the president by bringing in legislations that addresses the poverty of Nigerians. Mr. President, at some point I think that we will build another chambers for beggars. Because once you walk the street of this, every person is begging for money. So we need the chambers for them too, so that they can be holding their own sessions. That is the level of poverty that has now come upon this country. Now, we as a body representing Nigerians, we must engage in legislation. If we look at page 12 to 15 of this document, that is where it encapsulates what we are meant to do here. And spoke about this, about the enhancement and capacity building. If we have capacity, there is no sector of this economy that we can now stand here as legislator and representative of the people and discuss it without looking for consultants or experts on those issues. So we need capacity building for members of the National Assembly, not just senators, but House of Reps members as well. Like you said, the issue of budget, which is the most important legislation that we are saddled with. Budget is a very technical thing. I don't know how many of us have the capacity to actually look at budget and say that, yes, we are comfortable and then we can discuss this. You've just brought the issue of the MTEM, the Middle-Term Expenditure Framework. That is the revenue profile of the country. How many of us have the capacity to even understand what that is? And so capacity building, Mr. President, should be your primary concern, and you should go out of your way to make sure that we are properly educated about the issues that will come before us. And that will help us address the issue of poverty in this country. The issue of infrastructure.
You round up now.
We have infrastructure, whether it is a health sector or education, there is infrastructure deficit. So we need to use our preparation to address the issue of infrastructure in this country. Issues of security, Mr. President, issues of security has become a daily occurrence in this country. Every day you wake up, either so many people are killed here by bandits, either it is as a result of accident because of bad roads, all kinds of things. So once we have legislation that can help the president address the issue of security in this country, we will be home and dry. Now, coming to the issue of the economy of this country, Mr. President, if we take the gross domestic product of our country, sector by sector, you will discover that, as has been said, we have not paid attention to a lot of sectors that contribute a lot to the economy of this country. And so when you have one sector, which is the oil sector, that every one of us is dependent on, now contributing more in terms of the gross domestic product, the aggregate economic activities of that sector to the economy of this country. Mr. President, at some point, now we're talking about renewable energy, and the Chinese are producing electric cars. We'll come to the point that we'll have oil here, we'll not be able to sell it. What do we do at that point? So we need to look at the economy of this country and how we can diversify the economy. Not just lip service paying to it that today they will say that yes, we have diversified, tomorrow there are issues. On the political scene, Mr. President, Francis has mentioned something that is very, very important. The issue of foreign policy. Do we even have a foreign policy in this country? Of course we don't. I'm happy that in these chambers, a very experienced diplomat has been appointed chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I believe that, Mr. President, it is incumbent on us as legislators to make sure that Nigeria develops a foreign policy. Because without a foreign policy, we're just, everything is by happenstance as far as the international policy is concerned. Now, if we bring out, I have 30 seconds. Mr. President, let me round up. Let me round up on the issue of religion and ethnicity in this country. We are seated in these chambers. In the last assembly, I wasn't here. But Mr. President, you have tried. I want to commend you on that. You've been able to bring all of us together. There have been no issue, but Mr. President, the issue of religion in this country and ethnicity has made this country become so divisive that we're unable to attend any set objective, because everything is defined along religious, ethnic ground. And so it has become very imperative on this house as the highest legislative house in this country to make sure that we use legislation to address these issues and caution ourselves as leaders as well, so that we don't have a situation where, because the distinguished Senator Bukachua, who is a local Fulani man, will take that and then be accusing me, who is his master, as a thief man, Mr. President. And so we need to operate together. Both of the religions aspire to worship God and only one God. We have no basis to use religion as a division between us. Mr. President, the issue of ethnicity, the fact that I'm a thief man, does not make any difference between me and Lily Akunefe, who is an Igbo woman. All of us are together. And if we join together, using our experience, our different background, Mr. President will be able to achieve for this country. But that has become a basis of division in this country. Simply because I'm a team man, I don't want Bukachua to bring cows to come and destroy my yams. And then we can sit down and talk. We need to develop a platform where we can dialogue instead of using the things that should unite us to divide us, Mr. President. On that note, Mr. President, I want to thank my elder brother, Adamu Elero, for being able to put a framework for us to work with, and for you who set up this committee. We believe that God will give you the wisdom to continue to direct the affairs of these chambers aright. And you are directing the entire country because we represent the entire country, Mr. President. I want to thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much. The Princess, Senator Uche Lilian Ekunefe.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Uche Lilian Ekunefe. Mr. President, I represent Anambra Central from Anambra State. Thank you very much for giving me the floor to say one or two things from this script. Mr. President, first of all, let me commend you for putting together the gentlemen and ladies that came up with this ambitious paper we are discussing. Mr. President, I believe that this script represents your desires and intentions during your campaign to become the president of the 9th Senate. When I looked at your manifesto, exactly the content of the manifesto is what we have today, and this is our legislative agenda. Having said that, Mr. President, I would like to speak on the issue of security. Security is the major problem we have in this country. The primary responsibility of every government to provide security and welfare for its citizens. Mr. President, the Constitution has given us the power, the constitutional right to make laws for peace, order, and good governance. Can we do all that? Can we achieve all the things we are talking about here without securing the lives of Nigerians? Mr. President, our problem is becoming unmitigated, the issue of security. I remembered when the IG's condo was attacked. We took it with kid glove. When the Eagle Square was attacked, what happened? Then they came to 3-arm zone, the seat of power, where you have executive, you have legislature, you have judiciary. What happened? Mr. President, the papers are not reporting what is happening. There is danger in this country. The armed robbers and kidnappers have taken over all our highways. They are now the governors of the highways. The businessmen cannot travel. They are afraid of their lives. The farmers cannot go to farms. Nothing is going on, Mr. President. And we cannot talk about this security without talking about the local government financial autonomy. Because once the security is eroded, everything is affected. Poverty will rule the day. Today, what is happening in our local government? The encumbrance of the governors on our local government must be removed. We must achieve the financial autonomy for local government if we must move forward. Because if the local government cannot have access, complete control of their funding, the security threats cannot go. Where a local government chairman cannot even afford 50,000 naira to go into a community within his jurisdiction to know what is going on there. Then it boils down to local policing, community policing. If we do not achieve local government financial autonomy, Mr. President, the issue of poverty, the issue of security, the issue of all the issues we are raising today will not be curbed. Having said that, Mr. President, I would like to go to infrastructure. We, year in, year out, we budget money, and we are doing envelope system. Can we do anything with the envelope system in this country? The roads we have decayed. The road infrastructure is in shambles in Nigeria. We need to focus more on maintenance than starting new projects. Let us maintain the ones we have. All our high roads are gone. Some people were saying, oh, when President Jonathan was there, all the high roads in the north gone. High roads in the south gone. We need to focus more on maintenance. We also have to create awareness for communities to own up government infrastructures and respective communities. You put solar lights. Within 1 week or 2 weeks, somebody will steal it. And they will be waiting for government to come and replace it. Primary health care centers across the countries are not maintained.
You can start rounding up.
Taking ownership of government infrastructures in our communities by securing those infrastructures, by maintaining those infrastructures, it's a social corporate responsibility to help the government to achieve that. Then coming to corruption, Mr. President, what is even corruption? And who is a corrupt in Nigeria? Executive is shouting corruption. Judiciary is shouting corruption. And we are shouting corruption. A businessman is shouting corruption. Traders are shouting corruption. The client is shouting corruption. Then who is a corrupt Nigerian? How do we deal with this issue of corruption if we don't have a round table to discuss it? We need a national discourse on corruption so that we know that the giver is as culpable as the taker. If you have not given, have you taken? What is actually this corruption thing? We need to know who is a corrupt Nigerian, because everybody is pointing a giving finger on others. Then who is a corrupt Nigerian? We must discuss it as a major impediment to our growth. Coming to youth unemployment.
You have to round up now.
I heard my colleague that said that we are sitting on a keg of gunpowder. Mr. President, the gunpowder has caught fire. We are no longer sitting on it. When you advertise for one position, more than millions of youths will apply. They'll keep applying for 10, 15 years. At the end of the day, then when they're about to get it, the age limit will limit them. We need to look at it. Then coming to constitutional amendments, sir, we look at section 80 that talks about revenue. All revenues accrued to the nation should pay into federation accounts. Meanwhile, the acts of this parliament gave some parastatals the authority to retain certain percentage for the run cost of their agencies. Meanwhile, this constitution has hindered that provision, because any law that is against the constitution or in a variance with the constitution is to the extent of that not and void. So it has affected all the acts of this part. We need to look at that constitutional provision. Then section 28 that talks about dual citizenships. Do we have anything to lose if a Nigerian has another citizenship of another country? We don't lose anything. We are limiting ourselves. Other countries will come and become citizens of Nigerians. We are saying a citizen of Nigeria cannot be a citizen of another country. You will not run an election. What's the meaning of that? And we need to remove that encumbrance, because it means nothing. We need to explore. We need to go outside this country to explore as a citizen of those countries, if we must be able to tap into the gains of becoming enjoying the dual citizenship. Then poverty.
Now you have to wind up, please. We still have our colleagues who will have to speak, please.
Looking at the judgments that are coming out from the election tribunals, where the courts rejected the issue of card reader and the e-reporting, because we don't have them in the Electoral Act. We need to urgently amend our Electoral Act before the next election in order to have free, fair, credible elections, so that when somebody loses the election, the person will know that that person has lost, and allow the winner to enjoy the mandates given to him or her by the people. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Danjumala.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. I am Senator Lad Enjuma, representing Kaduna South. I stand here to congratulate the committee for the beautiful job they have done to justify this agenda. Well has been said by many speakers, and I appreciate all what they have said. Anything I said here, I'm just going to repeat it. But I say this, that the most biggest problem that we're having in this country is unemployment, security. And the one that I felt that affects me much is the security and the unemployment. Many people don't sleep in their house. Everybody is thinking of what to do of his life. Before you know, one will walk into your house and deal with you, either to be killed or to be kidnapped. Many people have spoken, more especially like Senator Uche, what she has just said now. People look at this unemployment as a problem, not as if it is not a problem. People give out money to secure position by making sure appointment is given to his son or his daughter. What do we do to avoid this? I have many organizations that have been reported to me that they are collecting money before giving appointment to applicants. I urge all of you here, as we are all seated, we must work hand in hand to make sure we prevent this. If you are an employer, you must look for how job will be provided to you, not to be given out money before you can be employed. Most people don't even have money to get that employment in that place. Our own is to make sure that people get the right thing at the right time. I'm assuring you that our children are in a very, very serious problem. If these things are not given at the right time, they go into taking drugs. You wake up, a child will come and stand before you. I want you to do this for me now. If you don't do it, another problem comes up for you just within the house before you get out of the house. So I'm pleading with all of you, all the senators here, all workers and whatever, we should stand by ourselves to make sure we prevent and protect this security image that is coming our way. If you can look at it very well, sir, sitting in this seat, you took a very, very beautiful decision by knocking this committee. They have done a very, very beautiful work by going into research and come up with this quantum of agendas to make sure that we fall into the lives. I am happy that God will give you the wisdom, the focus in steering all the activities that we're going to do in the 9th Senate. It is a hope that we are not going to miss anything we mean to do for the benefit of the people of this country and for the benefit of we, the senators, that we are elected to come and support of all our constituencies. Thank you. May God bless us.
Thank you very much, Senator Kuwoseni.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Yakubu Oseni, Kogi Central from Kogi State. This is a very nice and concise job. While commending the committee, I want to be a little bit different because this is a special Senate, the 9th Senate. And we have to, anything that we're doing has to be special so that we shouldn't be doing things the same way and expect different results. So we must do something different in the 9th Senate. Mr. President, I want to tell us that in budget, it is obvious that over 10 years up to date, year in, year out, we've been increasing budget on security. And the result is always we are still having insecurity. Insecurity is still on the rise in this nation. So it means that it is not working. So we have to do something different. And if I may suggest, we have to look inward into a kind of empowerment to our youths in form of job creation. Because if you look at the perpetrators of this insecurity that we are talking about are majorly youths. It means that an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So we really need to look at that. And also, industrialization. You see, a nation that is not industrialized can never grow economically. And we have to, in budgeting also, we have to prioritize our budgeting into certain sectors. There is, in economics, there is what we call scale of preference. And a nation that wants to succeed must apply it even to individual. Scale of preference means that you have to prioritize where you want to fund. And if I may suggest, I am seeing that Nigerians are carrying more than, we are biting more than we can chew by carrying along all the MDAs at once. It means that we have to prioritize it in such a way like agriculture, power. There are certain sectors that if you touch it, you have touched everything, particularly power, for example. If you touch power today and power is good today in Nigeria, it means that we have touched all the economy. If you look at agriculture and we touch it sincerely, it means that we have touched everywhere in the country, in the economy. So, Mr. President, I want us to sincerely look into this. But by next month, we will start talking about budgeting. And if you budget all the money to all the MDs again, equally, or the normal way that we have been doing it, I don't think we will achieve any result that will be different from what we've been getting. There is what we call MSME. There are so many countries that grow today. They are very particular about MSME. MSME, that is guided MSME, not by giving out money without training and all that. If you look at that, because before an economy can grow, it is the activities of individuals that grow economy, not government. If you take a look at Nigeria today, everybody wants to be engaged in government. Everybody wants to be employed by any of the MDAs. It is not possible. And I want to share the opinion of the Chief Whip. In a nation where the carpet is less than the recurrent expenditure, that economy is not growing at all. It's far, far behind. In any nation that doesn't have 70% carpet, that is capital expenditure, as against 30% record, that shows we are behind. Mr. President, I don't want to, time is first here now, I don't want to go too much, but I want to tell us that if we continue to be increasing the budget of security without increasing the budget of how to empower our youth, that shows we are still pouring water inside baskets, and I don't see us achieving any good result. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The Distinguished Senator Elisha Clifford Ishaku.
Mr. President, distinguished colleague, my name remains Elisha Ishaku Abo, aka Senator Ishaku Abo, SIA. Thank you, Mr. President, for making our work for us easier, more especially we freshers. Because when we are operating within a framework, we have a guide that will lead us in our 4 years in this house. I am I have so many things to say here, but let me pick one for want of time. Reform of national planning and annual budget. You will agree with me, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, our budgeting process, budget implementation, monitoring and evaluation in this country have been scandalous, to say the least. My eyes were opened a few years ago when I was employed as the Executive Secretary of Adamawa State Sports Council, where I sat with the civil servants to draft a budget for my agency. It spurred me actually to say, let me see what is happening in the other ministries. And what I saw made my heart bleed. A situation where copy and paste exists in budget development. I am pleading, Mr. President, I have the floor.
Please, Senator Fadausi, don't disturb him, leave him alone.
I want us, or people that are saddled with the responsibility of drafting budget for this country, to start looking at developing budget or adopting a bottom-to-top approach in our budget development. For example, we have 8,809 or thereabout wards in Nigeria. My ward is one of them. And in my ward, there is no face of federal government or state government in whatever capacity. No face of government at all. Yet, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather have been paying tax for government, yet there's no face of budget. I want, sir, for people that are saddled with the responsibility of developing budget for Nigeria to start developing needs assessment of each ward in this country. By doing that, we will have local government needs, a compendium of needs of each local government. So that if it means that at the end of each year, state government can take one project in each ward, local government take one, federal government take one. In my own ward, there will be 3 federal government projects in my own ward, in your own ward. And this also will help me go back to my village and go and do campaign so I win my next election. Apart from elections, sir,
are you announcing your contest for 2023?
It's my desire. So, Your Excellency, Senate President, sir, my distinguished colleague, we need to have a compendium of needs of each of these local governments so that when we are developing budget, we will start looking at the problems of each local government, each ward, apart from our own capital projects that has maybe like airports, like railways, like seaports and others. We need to start taking the problem of the people while developing our budget. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you very much. Senator Adeorele Adeyemi.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I want to really thank the committee that brought up this particular topic we are discussing today. Also, I want to commend and congratulate our Senate President because what he set out to do is doing it. Because of time, I want to go straight to all these points that are fundamental to all what we are saying. We are talking of economic downturn, we are talking of insecurity, we are talking of a lot of problems in Nigeria. And we have been fighting corruption and everything, all these things all along, they still persist. I've been thinking of what is really happening to us. And I've seen that there is a particular aspect of our lives that we have never touched. We are running an indisciplined society. All the malice, all the challenges, all the problems, all the ills we are talking of emanates from indiscipline. Sometimes in this country, we have war against indiscipline. And each time we have this, any government that's doing it, we have a sort of relief, but it's short-lived. It means that almost all of us, we have that problem with us. So I'm just saying that all what we are saying, if there is a way of complementing all our efforts with war against indiscipline, we shall be able to scale through. You are talking of security. No amount of money you put on security, no amount of training you give to the security operatives, if they are not disciplined, there's nothing you can do about it. So I want us to do something about this. There's no time to elaborate more on this. Another thing that has become part of our culture and tradition in this country is about we don't have measurement and we don't have standard. Anywhere you have that, there's no way you can measure or get any justifiable or justice done to anything. I was in Ivory Coast in 1968. As young as I was keeping an uncle's shop where my daily sales was about, on the average, it was about 2.5 million Nigerian currency then per day. Yet, nothing will get lost. Because when you are coming, everything you want to buy is by measurement. Recently, I went to Ghana and wanted to buy banana from a lady, a worker. I was trying to price as if I was in Nigeria. The lady just brought out the banana and it was counting the number of fingers. And he told me the price after counting the number of fingers of an answer. So yeah, in this country, we don't have standard and we don't have measurement. We have to look into that. Another thing is that we want to develop, but usually we put round peg in square holes. President can be anybody or governor can be any qualified person. But when you want to select your ministers, your commissioners, they are to assist in particular and specific areas of development. You can't just go and take, it is only Nigeria that you see, when you want to put somebody, you are talking of power, you are talking of works, you are talking of roads, you are talking of justice. If you take a lawyer to go and head an engineering outfit, there is no way, it may be a very competent and versatile person in his own field, but it is never done. If you go to all developing nations, you go to Korea, you go to China, all over, there should be a way of giving the person, an expert, the responsibility to carry out something. You may say that somebody is good at administration or management, but if you are not in my field, you will not be able. I'm coming.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Point of order.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to raise order 1023. And if I have your permission, I want to raise the order. Order on quorum, sir.
Raise it.
A question is raised by any senator as to the presence of a quorum. The presiding officer shall, within 15 minutes forthwith, direct the clerk to call the roll and announce the result, and this proceeding shall be without debate. Section 3 says, whenever after such roll call, it shall be ascertained that a quorum is not present, the President of the Senate may direct Sergeant at time to request and, when necessary, to compel the attendance of absentee senators, which order shall be determined without debate. And per this execution, until a quorum shall be present, no debate, nor motion except to adjourn or suspend sitting shall be in order. I so raise, Mr. President.
No, what are you raising? Explain.
Use of order, section 10.2, my count of our presence here is that we are not up to 1/3. Because the quorum of the Senate shall be 1/3 of the...
No, it's okay, I've gotten the point. Distinguished Ibrahim Olorogbe, this Senate has a quorum. And we started on well. Some have gone into the tea room, some have gone into prayer and come back. So the quorum subsists, and I will therefore rule you completely out of order. You should wind up, please. Round up.
Is for the issue of putting right peg in the right hole. I observed that during the screening of the ministers, most of our screenings were targeted. Once you see the CV, we have the hope that this person will be engaged in such, and our screening was targeted towards that. So I'm suggesting, I'm imploring us that anytime the executive are to bring nominees, they have to attach it with the probable position that such nominees are to occupy when they are engaged. And
you have to wind up, please.
And engagement. What I want to say is that we are talking that we don't have the youth are unemployed. Those that are employed are not engaged. We have to find a way of making our MDAs and even the private sector that once these youth are employed, they should also be engaged. By their engagement, there will be creation of another job opportunity. And so I'm rounding up now. In rounding up, I want to say that there should be a deliberate or effort to engage the youth. Whichever way, there should be a way of getting them employed. We are talking of scarcity of food, yet the agricultural sector, we have agric graduates, we have agric technicians, we have to put them there. So, and...
your time is up, please. You have 30 seconds to round up, please.
Into all this and make sure that we... Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Senator Francis Elemekena.
Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. My name is Senator Francis Elemekena, representing the good people of Edo North. Mr. President, I thank you for calling me to speak on this important topic. And I'm not going to bore you with more talk because, like somebody speaking last, it's just like, thank you. But, Mr. President, I have to commend the author of this legislative agenda. And I hope they are here with his start to take in for the new item that they have been brought into this recommendation. Because this recommendation is perfect, and some of the recommendations that some of our colleagues have been putting in, I hope they are noting it down so that it will be a perfect, thank you very much, a perfect job. There is no paper that is 100%, but it boils down to implementation. They talk, Mr. President, they talk about housing, providing housing for the Nigerian people, which is very good. And they suggested about the encouragement of the Federal Mortgage Bank. I suggest, Mr. President, that they should include Federal Housing Authority. Federal Housing Authority, as it stands today, they have the manpower, the instrument to provide more housing for this country, but they are not on allocation. They are just doing, if you, in the last Senate, when the Committee on Housing visited them, they were able to take little money from the Ministry of Housing to the housing sector. And that little money they gave to the Federal Housing Authority, you could see what they are doing in Zuba. Very fantastic. And this type of agency that is very good and it has the infrastructure to do the housing sector for the country is not even in the budgetary line. I suggest that this nice Senate should look at this Federal Housing Authority and be supplemented so that they can benefit from the federal government allocation yearly. Then that one will provide housing sector for the majority of this Nigeria. If the federal mortgage bank is encouraged, it will be encouraged to give money to an institutionalized agency like the Federal Housing Authority. That's my suggestion, Mr. President. The second one, Mr. President, is that year in, year out, you see Nigeria going out to borrow money from foreign country. Whereas we have an agency here that can fold our budget. Like some of these revenue agencies, which are graduate revenue agencies, what they do right now is to produce and spend. Nobody check them, and will come cap in hand to the federal government to go and collect money from the budget again, where we have scarce resources to go and borrow. Whereas what they're supposed to do is to put in money into the cover of the federal government revenue. As I have seen it here when we talk about the TSA. Now, what you have already said, Mr. President, about the oversight function of the committee oversighting some of these agencies, I can mention some of them which are known to you. They should oversight this agency, not only go there to look at it, and they should be able to come and tell this, the Senate how far they've gone, the remittances that they have forwarded to the federal government. If we follow them rigorously and you give a study on that, at least we will have money to spend for our budget without even going out to borrow more money from the country. So another one is this, Mr. Clifford talked about the federal government presence in this. And I believe that the presence of the federal government to present in every sector lies down with the National Assembly. And that is why the constitutional project that is in vogue every year should be constitutionalized. So that if the constituency project is constitutionalized, it's not somebody waking up one day to say the money, the constituency project that is being budgeted by the federal, the National Assembly, they don't know how it is spent. It is this constituency project that goes down to every nook and cranny of this country, because everybody is represented in the world, as it was said by Senator Clifford here now. If it is so that the Nigerian people know that this constituency project is constitutionalized and is what is the every world will benefit, which is that it benefited. So it's not a question of the constituency project is something for the National Assembly to make a jaboli about. So I suggest that this issue should be constitutionalized so that every Nigerian knows that yes, constituency project is part of government effort to bring government down to the grassroots level of the country. Now, another one too.
You start rounding up, please.
System for National Assembly is already open. We should not fight our face to please most Nigerians. We should be when we're talking about this open National Assembly, we cannot fight our face to please the country, to please another person. There is no way you can do it that the Nigerian people will say yes. The budget of National Assembly is open. They will still believe that it's not still open. There's something behind it. All they need to do most of them is that to see that the National Assembly, they are trekking. They are suffering, yes, it is there, they will know that it's open. So we should be very careful when we talk about this open system. We have open national budget. There is nothing hidden. So we will be very, yes. Mr. President, thank you for listening to me, and our approach is a nice job that we have done with this legislative agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before I call the last person, let me remind us that we sit here because Nigerians voted for us to represent them. And anything we do must be in the interest of the people we represent. So we'll continue to be as transparent, to be as accountable as possible to those who have made it possible for us to represent them. Last but not the least, Adamu Bilkachua.
Mr. President, my colleagues present and absent, Mr. President, I want to praise the document that is before us. It's a well-thought idea, and it was well documented by the committee that produced it. Now, this is like giving chance to senators to really look at everything that concerns Nigeria. Because here, when we started this debate, there is nothing that has not been mentioned. So I don't think it's fruitful for me to begin to repeat on security, on education, on the rest of it. Now, all the speakers really didn't mention our foreign policy. One TV man here, Senator, what do you call him? Suswan, mentioned something like that, but I know why he did, because he has been lobbying to be in my committee. Now, Mr. President, it's true that... Pardon? No, he will. And all that's why there is fighting in Benue. You steal a Fulani man's cow, he will not leave you alone. Anyway, Mr. President, we must pay particular attention to Nigerian foreign policy. Nigeria needs friends. We don't need more masters or more godfathers in the international community. And for us, and you know, the way we are proud to say we are the giant of Africa and we are the leaders in Africa, then we have to stand on our feet and demonstrate to the whole world that yes, indeed, we are the leaders and we're the giant of Africa. I know it takes a lot to be a leader. So Nigeria must extend hands of friendship on its own, not to say, oh, because we were in the Commonwealth, so we must be friends. No, we must develop friendship with individual countries, and we have to share common thoughts, and they will be also, our friends that is, ready to support us in the arena of international community, either disputes or development. But if we depend on our former colonial masters or the giant of the world, America, they will never cover our interests. We have to be the ones to cover our own. And in that respect, Mr. President, there are so many committees, 70 of them. But Foreign Affairs Committee is unique. When it comes to budgeting, every committee presents its demands, requests, and if you look at their expenditure, it's mostly domestic and Naira-based. In my committee, Foreign Affairs Committee, most of our activities have to do with traveling abroad, and that is done in foreign currency. Even the tickets you buy from airlines, they convert foreign currency into Naira, and we have to pay like everybody else. And also, the per diem or extra code that you give to members or senators that travel abroad has to apply to my committee members. And we have to do it, and we are the ones, we are the vehicle to really get the friendship or link the friendship of other countries to Nigeria. I can remember, Mr. President, when me and you were in the House of Representatives. I was chairman for the Affairs Committee. And Obasanjo introduced or rather tries to get Nigeria's debt forgiven by many other countries. And I remember I went to Rome, Italy, and I paid a visit to my counterpart in the Roman Assembly. And it was so fortunate. The topic then was Italy was tired and worried about Nigerian prostitutes in Rome, in Italy. And then we had to take a message that Nigeria needs to be forgiven its debt. And when I was discussing with my counterpart, he said exactly the Italian parliament was to discuss the question of forgiving African countries of the debt they owe them. So I said, is Nigeria qualified under your terms? Yes, he agreed that Nigeria is not, unfortunately, because their per capita income is above their red line. And I pleaded with him, if he could influence the per capita income to be raised a little bit so that Nigeria could qualify. And believe me, he consented. And I came back to the embassy, we drafted a letter and sent to him and gave him the details of Nigeria's per capita income. And he was leading a debate in the parliament, and he was able to push that through, and Nigeria's debt was forgiven. I know I did that. I didn't take commission, believe me, for doing that. So, Mr. President, I know everything else that everybody said about insecurity and all the rest of ills that Nigeria is facing. I know it all boils down and hinges on the availability to finance it. I know. Recently there was this announcement, I don't know whether it has come here or not, about the increase in VAT so that we can raise more revenue. But my candid idea, sir, Mr. President, is instead of increasing VAT, I think all of us senators know there are places where there is tremendous leakage in their revenue collection. This is not for open debate now, but I can discuss with Mr. President and suggest ways. And what we will realize if those holes are plugged will be 3-4 times what we will realize by increasing VAT. Mr. President, I'm happy with this agenda, and I hope we will pursue it vigorously and we will really impact on the thinking and the policy of the executive. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. With the contribution of Senator Mohamed Adam Belkachua, we have taken interventions from about, I think, 45 senators. We have decided consciously to allow every one of us who signified interest to speak on this, to do so because this is one of those very important things that lead us or guide us for the next 4 years by the grace of God in this National Assembly, in the Senate particularly. Let me join the rest of us in commending Senator Adamu Aleru, the chairman and members of his committee, for a job well done. This committee has done a very good job. You have given time and the Senate is pleased with what we have done, and the Senate is grateful. As for the various interventions and contributions, it shows the focus of our distinguished senators. We are here to make a very positive difference in the lives of Nigerians. We want to make our country better, and therefore those issues reflected in the agenda are issues that we are hopeful that could create those positive changes that will make life better for Nigerians. But at the same time, our agenda, the proposed agenda, cannot be exhaustive. Legislations we are supposed to continue as the society is a very dynamic one. Fresh challenges could emerge and will therefore require some interventions, whether through policies or through legislations. So this agenda will continue to be updated where we feel that we have to include new things or add new things as the society continues to develop. I also want to say that our committees will be the ones to flesh this agenda. Consciously, I could see the committee did not give the kind of detail some of our colleagues expected to see. It wouldn't have been possible to itemize every little thing that we think we have to legislate on. The task before our committees is for them to sit down and look at the challenges in the sector they oversight and come up with ideas on how the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, can come by way of legislative intervention. And we want to see that done because we'll introduce or reintroduce sessional reports by Senate committees. At the end of the year, we get reports from committees laid before the Senate to tell us what the committees have been able to do. That is different from oversight reports. The oversight reports can be part and parcel of the sessional reports. So we are challenging our committees to go back and look at our agenda and see what is referred to the area, the oversight, and come up with an idea of possible legislative intervention. But in addition to this also, when we engage the MDS that we oversight, probably the first thing we need to do with them is to challenge them to give us a roadmap of what they want to do, to intervene in the sectors they are supposed to work about or on. This is important because we should not be only interested in budget when they bring them, but we should be able to ask them how do they intend to change or to reverse situations that are not desirable or bring development in the areas they are supposed to work on. For example, the Federal Minister of Agriculture, we are supposed to challenge the Minister of Agriculture, tell us how you are going to support the farmers, what programs are there to encourage, for example, the dairy farmers or those who are fishermen and so on and so forth. We want something categorical, something that is also measurable, that 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, we should be able to call them back and say, what have you achieved with this? And that will also guide us in the budgeting process. But it is important that our committees task themselves, come up with possible legislations, but before you do that, we engage the executive arm of government, the ministers when they come or head of agencies. We must insist on what are the areas of intervention so that we're able to marry the two together, like Senator Ahmad Babakar was suggesting, that we should make sure we sit together with them. Yes, but this legislation agenda is particularly ours. We represent the people, we know their feelings, and we imagine that the legislative perspectives we have here may be slightly different from the executive perspectives, but at the same time we are going to serve the same people. And that's where the need for us to come together and also reconcile our thinking regarding the taking Nigeria to the next level would be. Let me be a little bit specific. Today, the education sector suffers a lot. I keep on saying the 11 or 12 million children out of school, I imagine we owe them that responsibility to do something about them. And that is taking us back to the implementation of the Basic Education Act. How do we ensure that we reduce and eventually eliminate the number of out-of-school children in our streets? Whatever name we give that kind of program, we have to do something. And government has to take responsibility. Government both at the federal and state levels. We have to create some funds. We have to increase the number of classrooms across the country. We have to employ more teachers. We have to train and retrain teachers. States cannot run away from this, but the federal government must provide the leadership. At the tertiary level, we produce graduates who have nothing to add to the development of the country. We must face the reality of making our economy work for the people. We need our graduates, both in universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education, actually, to be graduates that have some functionality. Either they can engage themselves in some productive activities, or when they're employed, they should be able to perform. If we want our economy to function, today's economy, modern economy, is not about you have oil. It's about what capacity your citizens have. Many countries have no resources, the kind of resources we have, but they have been able to develop the capacities of their people. We go to India, China, the same thing, and we have to do the same thing. We have to have a review of the curriculum of most of our levels, maybe basic or secondary level up to the tertiary level. We are lucky to be blessed with senators like the Sultan of Kano, Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, who was a Minister of Education, a very long time teacher before he became governor, and of course permanent secretary, and so on and so forth. So distinguished Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, we are going to engage you in this kind of thing. We really need to change the narratives in the education sector. We cannot accept this or live with it anymore. We have to do something. I also believe that the current number of agencies of government is simply too much and unnecessary. We have close to 700 agencies of government. Many of them only live on budget. They have no function to perform. Something has to be done on this, and we have to work with the great arm of government, because either we merge some of them or we simply eliminate many of them. And we decide we don't have money, we don't have resources. Instead of spending so much on this kind of agencies that don't add value, we should really eliminate them or merge them and then save the money for capital budgets, just like Senator Yakubu Oseni was suggesting. So I believe that our committee on establishment and all of us have to do something. We are going to engage with the executive. We have to have a review of the number that we have. And it is not about the number, really. It's about the functionality. Because we need to create some, because we need them today, because of the challenges we face. Many of those agencies that exist today were created at certain time that maybe they were to deal with certain challenges. Now probably they are no more relevant. So we get rid of them, and maybe if we need new ones, we enact new ones, but we need to really attend to that issue. I also believe that our Committee on Health need to find out what happened to the 1% of the Consolidated Revenue Fund that this the National Assembly passed in the last National Assembly for the health sector. Because that is a lot of money for that sector, and we want to see how it has been utilized. What are the successes and what are the challenges? What can we do to make it more efficient? Because it's not enough for us to just pass laws or make laws. One thing is when we make laws, we should be able to follow through on the implementation, because what we hope and pray for is efficacy. So, Senator Loral Bey, you and your team, you need to start working on that, so that if there is any for any further intervention, maybe to amend the law. If it is going on well, that's what we need. But if there are challenges, we need to know the challenges. The electoral reforms is supposed to be a continuous thing. We need to do some more electoral reforms. And what we have witnessed in 2019 election cases should give us some ammunition on what we need to do to intervene to address some of the challenges. And even those that we have not been able to deal with in the past, I believe that we need to start that in good time. By next year, if there will be any electoral reform, we should be able to finish them by next year, or the latest 2021. We shouldn't allow ourselves to get too close to election times, because that will become a little bit challenging and problematic. We also think we should do something about consumer credit system here in this country. If someone is buying a house, you shouldn't be expected to go and bring the entire fund for the house. That leads to corruption. Or cars. If someone is buying a car, he doesn't have to go and bring the entire money to buy the car. Because if he's a successful servant, why does he get that kind of money? But if there is a system that gives someone an allowance, provided you have a job, maybe you can pay in 10 years or in 20 years, I think that would reduce the tendency for people to dip their hands into the public purse. With this and many suggestions that we have made, I'm sure our agenda is set now, and I will charge all our committees once again that we have to flare up the intervention, the agenda that affects the sectors that we are supposed to oversight, and also call the ministers and other head of agencies to ask them their roadmap. We want something measurable. We don't want to deal with people on the basis of just talking and explaining this budget without computers and so on and so forth. Yes, Senate Leader.
With this, I would like to move a motion.
No, I have not concluded. I will call you. So I want to commend all of us for this very important debate on our legislative agenda. And Leader, I know we are all in a hurry. Actually, before we came, we said this sitting for today should not last more than beyond 1 o'clock. We didn't know that the debate will take this dimension, but it is worthwhile. Senate Leader, you can now go ahead with your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I rise to move a motion that the Senate do adopt the legislative agenda, taking into account the brilliant contributions made by members during the debate, as a working document to guide the activities of this distinguished chamber for the next 4 years. I so move.
Minority Leader.
I so second the motion ably moved by the Leader.
Distinguished colleagues, those in support of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senate Leader, allow me, because I will be the one to move. You can stand down the other items on the order paper.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I rise to move another motion for the Senate to suspend the consideration of other items on our agenda to next legislative day. I so move, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, Minority Leader, please.
I second the motion that the Senate do suspend all other items on the paper until another.
Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that we stand down all the other items on the other paper till another legislative day, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, I have an announcement, an amendment to an earlier referral of the MTF FSP to the Committee on Finance. The Committee on Finance will now be joined by the Committee on National Planning to work on the 2020-2022 MTF FSP. But the lead committee will be the Committee on Finance. Let me also wish Nigeria a happy birthday. The next week Tuesday will be the 1st of October. If we were to be here, we would have devoted the whole of Tuesday next week to talk about what Nigeria has been and what it could be. But let me, on behalf of the Senate, wish Nigerians, all of us, a happy birthday for our country. The journey has not been an easy one, but like any other country, we'll be able to overcome the challenges that tend to keep us stagnant or sometimes even take us back. There is no need for us to despair. The leadership of this country has been trying hard to make a positive difference in the lives of Nigerians, and we want to appreciate Nigerians for the support and understanding that they have shown so far. And I want to urge us as a National Assembly to continue with the kind of the new understanding that we have in our chamber here in the Senate. We work together regardless of our political platforms, and that is because we understand that we have common challenges as Nigerians. Those challenges affect Nigerians across any political, ethnic, or religious divide. And there is no need, like Senator Gabriel Suswam remarked, for any of us really in leadership position to think ethnic or to think religious or to think partisan. We should be able to provide the kind of required leadership to make this country better. And Nigerians, having lived for 59 years, we have nowhere else to go but to remain in this country and make it better, like the President said one time ago. And of course, as for the unity of this country, like Senator Malai said and emphasized by Senator Gabriel Suswam, remains an uncompromisable issue. We must remain united. We must have faith in our country. We must make our country progress, and God will continue to be with this country. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. With this, let me adjourn the Senate. So I will put the question. Those in support, the Senate, actually I will put the question, I don't have to put the question. The Senate do adjourn till Wednesday, the 2nd day of October 2019 at 10 a.m. prompt.